The brake lights ahead burn a familiar, frustrating red. Outside, a chorus of car horns rises and falls, the soundtrack to a city that never stops moving, yet always feels stuck. Inside the car, the world is just as loud, though quieter. A phone buzzes, a constant stream of notifications, emails from the boss, reminders of bills to be paid. A headline announcing another crisis. The mind races along, a frantic internal monologue listing worries about work, anxieties about family, a subtle but persistent feeling that you are falling behind, though you aren't even sure what the race is for. There is a tightness in the chest, a shallow quality to the breath. This is not a particularly bad day. For many of us, this is just a day. This is the new normal, an invisible storm that rages within the quiet confines of our own being. We live in the great paradox of our time. We are more connected to one another through technology than at any point in human history, yet we report feeling more isolated and lonely. We have built a world of astonishing convenience and material abundance, a world where anything we desire is just a click away, yet we feel a profound lack of inner peace. We chase promotions, we chase possessions, we chase followers, we chase the fleeting high of the next experience, believing that just over the horizon lies a place of lasting satisfaction. But the horizon keeps moving. The chase only leaves us breathless, exhausted, and with a nagging sense of emptiness, as if we are running on a treadmill, perpetually in motion, but never truly arriving anywhere. What if the storm isn't the traffic, the notifications, or the demands of the world? What if those are just the weather? What if the real storm is our reaction to it all? The true source of the turbulence is not outside of us, but within our own minds. And if the storm is within, then so, too, is the stillness. There exists an ancient path, a map meticulously drawn over thousands of years, not as a religion demanding blind faith, but as a science of the mind, a practical set of tools for navigating our inner world. It is a gentle invitation, not to escape the world or its challenges, but to fundamentally change our relationship with them. It is the wisdom of Buddhism, a timeless guide to finding the eye of the hurricane, that quiet, unshakable center that exists within every one of us, waiting to be discovered. This is an invitation to begin that journey inward, to learn how to still the waters of the mind, and to find peace, not in a different place, but in a different way of being. We begin by acknowledging a quiet truth, a feeling so constant it has become like the air we breathe. It is the low-grade hum of anxiety that persists even on our best days. It is the background static of worry that plays beneath the surface of our pleasant moments. You can have a good job, a loving family, your health, and a comfortable home, and yet, there it is, a subtle sense of disquiet, a feeling that something is not quite right, or that the peace you currently feel is fragile, temporary, and could be shattered at any moment. It is a fundamental friction between ourselves and the world, a feeling we spend most of our lives trying to ignore, to numb, or to distract ourselves from. We scroll through our phones, we binge watch another series, we chase the next promotion, we plan the next vacation, all in a silent, desperate effort to outrun this shadow. But it is always there when the noise stops, in the quiet moments before sleep, or in the stillness of an early morning, the feeling returns. The ancient teachers of the Buddhist tradition had a name for this pervasive and deeply human experience. They called it dukkha. To translate dukkha simply as suffering is to do it a great disservice, and to miss the profound and compassionate nature of its diagnosis. The English word suffering conjures images of immense tragedy, of deep and agonizing pain. While dukkha certainly includes this, its meaning is far broader, more subtle, and more relevant to our everyday lives. A more accurate translation might be unsatisfactoriness, dis-ease, or a state of being out of alignment. It is not a grim declaration that life is nothing but pain. Rather, it is a wise and gentle acknowledgement that our human experience, by its very nature, involves a fundamental level of stress and discontent. Recognizing dukkha is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of clarity and courage. It is like a doctor correctly identifying a chronic, low-level fever that the patient has grown so accustomed to. They no longer even notice it consciously, yet it saps their energy and colors their entire existence. The Buddha was not a prophet of doom. He was a physician of the soul. His first teaching, the first noble truth, was simply this: there is dukkha. He was saying, I see your condition. I see the invisible storm. Let us look at it together, without fear, so that we may understand it. To truly grasp this concept, we can look at dukkha in 3 distinct forms, each one revealing a deeper layer of our experience. The first is the most obvious, the suffering of pain, or dukkha. This is the dukkha we all know and readily identify. It is the sharp pain of a headache, the deep ache of a chronic illness. It is the sting of rejection, the grief of losing a loved one, the anxiety of losing a job, the fear that comes with a frightening medical diagnosis. It is the raw, unavoidable pain that life presents to us. When we are in the midst of this kind of suffering, there is no ambiguity. The storm is raging, the waves are crashing over us, and our only thought is to find a shore. This form of dukkha is a universal aspect of having a vulnerable body and a sensitive heart in a world we cannot fully control. No amount of wealth or success can build a wall high enough to keep out this fundamental reality of life. The second form is more subtle and perhaps more pervasive in our modern, comfortable world. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the stress that comes from the fact that pleasant experiences do not last. Think of a perfect, golden afternoon on a long-awaited vacation. The sun is warm, the company is good, the scenery is beautiful, everything is just right. And yet, creeping into the corner of your mind is a subtle thought, a tiny shadow. This will end soon. In a few days, I'll be back at my desk. This moment is already passing. That subtle anxiety, that inability to fully inhabit our joy because we are already mourning its passing, is viparinama dukkha. It is the bitterness that tinges the sweetness of a delicious meal because we know it will be over in a few bites. It is the frantic attempt to capture a perfect sunset with a camera, a futile effort to freeze a moment that is, by its very nature, a process of vanishing. We experience this when a passionate romance cools into a comfortable routine, when the excitement of a new car fades into the mundane reality of a daily commute, when the peak of health and youth inevitably begins its slow, gentle decline. Our resistance to the universal law of change, our clinging to pleasant experiences, and our desperate wish for them to be permanent, is a constant source of underlying stress. We are trying to hold water in a clenched fist, and the constant effort and the inevitable failure is a deep and persistent form of our disquiet. The third form, the deepest and most profound, is sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the background hum of unsatisfactoriness that is woven into the very fabric of our being. It is the stress of simply being a self. From the moment we are born, we are a complex, ever-changing process of physical sensations, thoughts, emotions, memories, and perceptions. We are not a solid, static thing. Yet, we create and cling to the idea of a solid, permanent me. This constant, subconscious effort to maintain, defend, and prop up this constructed identity is exhausting. It is the subtle, existential anxiety of being a fragile, dependent creature in a vast and impersonal universe. It is the feeling of being a collection of temporary conditions, this body, these thoughts, these feelings, and mistaking it for a permanent home. Sankhara dukkha is the tension of being a wave in the ocean that believes it is separate from the ocean itself. The wave rises, it has a momentary identity, and it fears its own inevitable collapse back into the whole, not realizing that its true nature was always the water. This is the most subtle storm, the atmospheric pressure of existence itself, a dis-ease so fundamental that we often don't even have words for it, yet it drives so much of our restless searching. To understand how we perpetuate our own disquiet, there is a powerful and ancient story, the parable of the second arrow. Imagine a person walking through a forest who is suddenly struck in the leg by an arrow. The physical pain is immediate and intense. This is the first arrow. It represents the unavoidable pains of life, the sickness, the loss, the accidents, the disappointments. It is the dukkha of pain, and in this life, we will all be struck by first arrows. They are a part of the territory of being human. But then, what does the person do? Instead of simply tending to the wound, they begin to fret and despair. They think, why me? This is horrible. I can't believe this happened. My whole life is ruined. The pain is unbearable. I will never recover. This torrent of negative thoughts, this mental anguish, This story of victimhood and despair that they tell themselves about the initial pain is the second arrow, and it is an arrow they shoot into themselves. The wound from the first arrow is painful, but the wound from the second arrow is often far worse, and it is self-inflicted. The parable teaches us a profound lesson. While we may have little control over the first arrows of life, the second arrow is almost entirely within our control. The bulk of our suffering, our true and lasting misery, comes not from the events themselves, but from our reaction to them. The storm of life may send its lightning bolts, but the devastating fire that consumes the forest of our mind is a fire we often kindle ourselves. Recognizing these truths, seeing the nature of this unseen storm, is the first essential step toward peace. It is not an admission of defeat, it is the beginning of empowerment. By finally daring to look at the precise nature of our disquiet, we stop running from a nameless shadow and begin to understand the mechanics of our own mind. We see that our unhappiness is not random, but arises from specific causes and conditions, and this realization opens up a luminous possibility. If our suffering has a cause, then it can also have an end. Now that we have seen the storm, we must ask the next crucial question. If so much of our disquiet is tied to the pain of change and the fragility of our existence, what is the nature of this change? Why is everything, even our greatest joys, so fleeting? This inquiry leads us directly to the heart of the matter, to the ever-flowing river of impermanence. The source of our disquiet, our dukkha, is deeply connected to our relationship with change. We identified the suffering that arises when good things end, the subtle anxiety that shadows even our happiest moments. This points us toward a truth so fundamental, so all-pervasive, that we often fail to see it, like a fish that is unaware of the water it swims in. This is the truth of impermanence. In the Buddhist tradition, this universal law is called anicca. To understand anicca is not to adopt a pessimistic or morbid worldview. It is simply to open our eyes to the nature of reality as it is. It is a law as fundamental as gravity. Everything that arises will pass away. Every beginning has an ending. Every meeting contains a future parting. This is not a curse. It is the rhythm of the cosmos, the pulse of life itself. The flower blooms in spectacular glory, and in its very blooming, the process of its wilting has already begun. A star is born in a fiery nebula, and it shines for billions of years, but its light will one day fade. Our own lives are no different. We are born, we grow, we age, and we pass. Every single component of our existence, from the cells in our body to the thoughts in our mind, is in a state of constant, ceaseless flux. The problem is not anicca itself. The problem, and the source of immense suffering, is our resistance to it. We live in a state of undeclared war against reality. We build our lives as if we are creating permanent structures on solid ground, when in fact we are building sandcastles on a shore with an incoming tide. We cling, we grasp, we try to hold on, we fall in love, and, instead of savoring the dynamic, evolving dance of the relationship, we try to freeze it, to lock it into a state of permanent romantic bliss, becoming anxious at the first sign of change. We achieve a moment of success and, instead of appreciating it as a fleeting peak, we try to build a permanent fortress there, terrified of the inevitable descent. We cling to our youth and beauty, investing fortunes in creams and procedures to halt the natural, graceful process of aging. We cling to our identities, our job titles, our roles as parents or partners, as if these are solid, unchanging monoliths, and we feel a deep existential crisis when they shift or disappear. This constant struggle against the flow of life is utterly exhausting. It fills our lives with tension, anxiety, and an inevitable sense of failure. We are like a person trying to stop a mighty river with their bare hands. We stand in the current, straining with all our might, and for a moment, we might feel like we are succeeding. But the river is relentless. The pressure builds, our strength fails, and eventually, the current sweeps us away, leaving us feeling defeated and battered. The river was never the enemy. Our resistance was the problem. What if we could change our entire orientation? What if, instead of fighting the current, we learn to flow with it? This is the liberation that an understanding of anicca offers. When we truly accept that everything is impermanent, a profound sense of freedom can arise. When you are in the depths of sorrow or grief, The wisdom of Anika is a compassionate hand on your shoulder, whispering, "This too shall pass. No pain, no matter how intense, is permanent. The clouds will part, and the sun will shine again." When you experience a humiliating failure or make a terrible mistake, Anika reminds you that this moment does not define you forever. It is a single frame in a very long movie. The future is not fixed. Change and transformation are always possible. This frees you from the prison of the past. Conversely, when you are experiencing a moment of great joy, Anika allows you to savor it more fully. Instead of anxiously trying to cling to it, you can relax into it, appreciating its precious, fleeting beauty without the pressure of trying to make it last forever. You can hold your happiness like you would hold a delicate butterfly in your open palm, appreciating its beauty without crushing it by closing your fist. Embracing impermanence is to learn the art of surfing the waves of life. The surfer does not try to stop the waves. They understand the power and nature of the ocean, and they learn to ride its energy with balance, grace, and skill. Sometimes they ride a triumphant wave all the way to shore. Other times they wipe out spectacularly. But in either case, they know another wave is always coming. This understanding cannot remain a mere intellectual concept. To be transformative, it must become a lived experience. We can practice seeing Anika in every moment of our lives, right here and now. The most intimate and accessible place to begin is with your own breath. Take a moment to simply observe it. Notice the sensation of the air entering your nostrils. This is the birth of the breath. It fills your lungs for a short period its lifespan, and then it flows out, dissolving back into the atmosphere. This is its death. And then a new breath is born. In, out, arising, passing away. A constant, gentle, reliable demonstration of impermanence happening within your own body, moment after moment. You can also watch your mind. Sit quietly and observe the thoughts that arise. Where do they come from? A memory of yesterday appears, unbidden. It lingers for a few seconds, and then, just as mysteriously, it vanishes. An anxious thought about the future bubbles up. You notice it, and then it is replaced by a thought about what to have for dinner. Your mind is like a sky. The thoughts are like clouds, drifting through. Sometimes the sky is clear, sometimes it is full of dark, stormy clouds. But the sky is never the clouds. By watching this endless parade of thoughts arising and passing away, you begin to realize you are not your thoughts. You are the vast, open awareness in which they happen. The same is true for feelings and physical sensations. A sudden itch appears on your arm. You watch it. It intensifies, and then it fades. The sound of a distant siren enters your awareness, grows louder, and then disappears into silence. Your entire reality is a vibrant, shimmering, dynamic flow of transient phenomena. When you start to see this directly, the world begins to look very different. The desperate need to cling to things loosens its grip. There is a beautiful story that illustrates this journey from intellectual understanding to a deep, heartfelt acceptance of impermanence. It is the story of a young mother named Kisa Gautami. Her first and only child had died, and she was overcome with a grief so profound it bordered on madness. Denying his death, she clutched the small, lifeless body to her chest and wandered through her village, begging everyone she met for medicine that could bring him back. Some mocked her, others pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, someone suggested she go see the Buddha. She rushed to him, laid her child at his feet, and pleaded for a cure. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "There is only one thing that can help you. Go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed, but it must come from a house where no one, a child, a parent, a spouse, or even a servant thus, ever died." Hope surged in Kisa Gautami's heart. A mustard seed was such a simple thing to find. She began her search immediately, going from door to door. At the first house she asked, "Can you spare me a mustard seed? The Buddha has sent me." "Of course," the woman inside replied, and went to fetch it. As she handed it over, Kisa Gautami remembered the condition. "Wait," she said, "has anyone in this house ever died?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said sadly, "the living are few, but the dead are many. My husband died just last year." With a heavy heart, Kisagutami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Every family had a mustard seed, and every family had a story of loss. One had lost a child, another a mother. One had lost a beloved uncle, another a dear friend. As the sun began to set, she had walked the entire village and had not found a single house untouched by death. She sat down by the side of the road, the body of her child still in her lap. As she watched the flickering lights of the village appear in the twilight, a profound realization washed over her. Her grief, which had felt so personal, so isolating, so uniquely hers, was in fact the grief of all humanity. She was not alone. The law of death, the law of impermanence, touched everyone, without exception. In that moment of shared sorrow, her heart broke open, and her clinging to her personal loss began to dissolve. She understood. She had finally found the medicine she was looking for. Not a mustard seed, but the wisdom of acceptance. To truly embrace anicca is to undergo a transformation like Kisagotami's. It is to move from a state of protest and denial to one of gentle, compassionate acceptance. It is to learn to hold our joys with gratitude and our sorrows with grace, knowing that both are temporary guests in the house of our awareness. It is to find a deep peace not in permanence, but in fluidity. When we truly understand that everything is a flowing river, a new question naturally arises. If all my thoughts, feelings, sensations, and even the cells of my body are constantly changing, constantly flowing by, then who or what is the I that is witnessing all of this? Is there a solid, unchanging self at the center of this river of experience? Or is the watcher also part of the flow? This question leads us to an even deeper and more liberating truth, the idea of the selfless nature of reality. We have journeyed into the heart of the storm, recognizing the pervasive disquiet of dukkha. We have stood on the bank of the ceaseless river and acknowledged the universal law of anicca, or impermanence. We have seen that our resistance to this constant flow is a primary source of our tension. This leads us to the most profound and perhaps most challenging inquiry on this path. We must turn the lens of our investigation inward, upon the investigator itself. We must ask the ultimate question: who or what is this I that experiences the storm? Who is this self that clings to pleasure and recoils from pain? If everything we experience, our body, our thoughts, our emotions, is in a state of constant flux, is there a solid, unchanging core at the center of it all? The answer that this ancient wisdom offers is both radical and deeply liberating. The answer is anatta, often translated as no self, or more accurately, not self. This teaching does not suggest that you do not exist. You are clearly here, reading these words, breathing, thinking. Rather, it suggests that what you think you area permanent, separate, independent self is an illusion. It is a beautiful, complex, and sometimes tragic mirage that we mistake for solid ground. Imagine your entire being is a vast and thriving corporation. This corporation has many departments. There is the physical department, which is your body, responsible for all biological processes. There is the feelings department, where emotions like joy, sadness, and anger are generated. There is the perception department, which interprets all incoming sensory data. The mental formations department is the busiest of all, a chaotic office of ideas, opinions, memories, stories, and intentions. And finally, there is the consciousness department, the raw awareness that illuminates all the others. We live our entire lives with the unquestioned assumption that somewhere, in a top-floor corner office, sits the CEO. We call this CEO me, I, or myself. We believe this CEO is the one in charge, the one making all the decisions, the one who owns the corporation. The practice of insight is the process of conducting a thorough internal audit to find this CEO. We start by searching the physical department. Is the CEO my body? No. My body is constantly changing. Cells die and are replaced. It is a process, not a permanent entity. We search the feelings department. Is the CEO my anger or my joy? No. These are fleeting visitors. They come and go like weather patterns. We are not the weather. We search the chaotic office of the mental formations department. Is the CEO my thoughts, my opinions, my life story? No. These are also in constant flux, shaped by conditions. arising and passing away. After searching every corner of the corporation, we come to a startling conclusion. The corner office is empty. There is no separate, independent CEO running the show. The corporation functions as a beautiful, intricate, and interdependent network of processes. The self we've been looking for is not an entity in the system. It is a label we give to the activity of the system as a whole. This self is a composite, a temporary assembly of different parts. The Buddhist teachings break this down into what are called the 5 aggregates, or the 5 heaps that we mistake for a solid self. First is former physical body. Second is feeling the raw data of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral sensations. Third is perception, the mental function that labels and categorizes our experience. This is good, this is bad, that is a tree. Fourth are the mental formations. This includes all our thoughts, intentions, biases, and psychological habits. It is the narrative spinner, the voice in our head that constantly tells us who we are based on our past and our future desires. Fifth is consciousness, the raw awareness that makes experience possible. What we call I is simply the dynamic, ever-changing interplay of these 5 processes. It's like a car. A car is made of wheels, an engine, a chassis, and so on. We use the label car for convenience, but there is no separate carness that exists apart from its components. If you take all the parts away, there is no car left over. Similarly, if you observe these 5 processes of your own experience, you will find no separate, permanent self hiding behind them. The self is a verb, not a noun. At first, this idea can be frightening. If there is no me, am I just nothing? Does anything matter? But this fear comes from a misunderstanding. Anatta does not mean annihilation. It means liberation. Discovering that the CEO is not in the office is the most empowering discovery you can make. Why? Because if you are not your thoughts, you do not have to be the prisoner of your anxious thinking. An anxious thought can arise, but you can learn to see it as just a cloud passing through the sky of your mind. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to become it. If you are not your emotions, you are not defined by your anger or your sadness. You can experience these powerful energies without being consumed by them. You can give them space to arise and pass away without identifying with them. This creates an incredible sense of freedom and resilience. So much of our daily anxiety comes from the exhausting, lifelong project of ego maintenance. We are constantly defending our self-image, polishing our story, worrying about what others think of me. When we see that this me is an illusion, a fluid process, the whole defensive structure begins to relax. Criticism may still sting, but it doesn't strike at our core, because we realize there is no solid core to strike. Praise can be enjoyed, but we don't become addicted to it, because we know it is directed at a temporary constellation of conditions. There is a famous Buddhist parable that illustrates this beautifully, the parable of the raft. The Buddha said that his teachings are like a raft, skillfully constructed for one purpose, to cross a great river of suffering and reach the safe shore of liberation. A person wanting to cross the river builds or finds this raft and uses it to paddle across. The raft is essential for the journey, but upon reaching the other side, what does a wise person do? Do they say, "This raft was so useful, I must carry it on my back for the rest of my journey"? Of course not. That would be foolish. They would be burdened by the very thing that saved them. A wise person leaves the raft at the river's edge, expresses their gratitude, and continues their journey on foot, unencumbered. The concept of the self is part of the raft. It is a useful and necessary convention for navigating the world. We need the terms I and you to function, to communicate, to love. But it is a tool, not an ultimate reality. To cling to the idea of a solid, separate self after it has served its purpose is like carrying the heavy raft on your back. To realize anatta is to reach the other shore and gently, gratefully, set the raft down. You lose nothing of value. You only lose a burden you never realized you were carrying. This doesn't lead to a cold, disconnected state. On the contrary, it leads to the deepest connection possible. When the illusion of a separate self dissolves, the artificial barrier between me and you, between me and the world, becomes porous and transparent. We realize we are not isolated islands, but interconnected waves in a single ocean of being. Our true nature is not separation, but boundless connection. So, we have journeyed far. We have seen the storm of dukkha. We have understood its connection to the relentless river of anicca. And now, we have deconstructed the very house of this self, finding it empty of any permanent owner. This brings us to a crucial turning point. If there is no solid self, then what is it that continues to suffer? What is it that drives this process forward? If the house is empty, what keeps rebuilding its walls day after day? We must now turn our attention to the dynamic energies that fuel the storm, the very engines of our discontent. We must investigate the deep, instinctual forces of grasping and aversion that keep this phantom self in a perpetual state of hunger and fear. Our investigation now leads us to the unquenchable thirst of craving. We have embarked on a profound archaeological dig of the mind. We began by identifying the artifact of our discontent, the feeling of dukkha. We then examined the soil in which it was buried, the ground of universal impermanence, or anicca. We went deeper still, discovering that the tomb we thought belonged to a solid, permanent king, the self, was in fact empty, a reality the tradition calls anatta. And this discovery of the empty house leaves us with the most vital question of all. If there is no permanent resident, who keeps paying the rent? If there is no solid self, what is the force that continually generates the feeling of incompleteness, the hunger, the neediness that sends us scrambling out into the world to find something to make us feel whole? This brings us face to face with the engine of the storm itself. We must now examine the fuel that powers this entire cycle of suffering. This fuel has a name. It is tanha, a Pali word that translates as thirst, craving, or clinging. Tanha is not a passive state. It is a powerful, active, compulsive energy. It is the deep, primal, and relentless reaching of the mind for something to hold on to, something to consume, something to become, in a desperate attempt to solidify the phantom self and relieve its inherent feeling of lack. This thirst is not the same as a simple, healthy desire. It is a feverish, agitated state of mind, one that is rooted in delusion. It is the voice that whispers, "If only I had that new car, that promotion, that relationship, or that experience, then I would finally be happy and at peace." It is a conditional promise of future happiness that the mind makes to itself over and over again. And for a brief moment, when the craving is satisfied, it feels like the promise has been fulfilled. The new possession brings a thrill. The validation from others feels good. The pleasant sensation is enjoyable. But because of anicca, because everything is impermanent, the thrill fades. The validation needs to be renewed. The pleasant sensation disappears. The feeling of satisfaction evaporates, and the underlying thirst returns, often stronger and more demanding than before. We are like a person with a deep itch. Scratching it provides a moment of intense relief, but it only irritates the skin further, ensuring the itch will come back with a vengeance. Tanha is the force that keeps us perpetually scratching, forever seeking lasting satisfaction in things that can only ever be temporary. It is the engine that drives the hedonic treadmill, keeping us running frantically but getting nowhere. To understand this engine, we must look at its three main cylinders, the three distinct types of thirst that propel us. The first and most recognizable is kama tanha, the craving for sense pleasures. This is the thirst for agreeable experiences through our six senses. Pleasant sights, sounds, smells, tastes, physical sensations, and even pleasant thoughts or ideas. In our modern world, we live inside a gigantic, sophisticated machine built almost entirely to stimulate and exploit kama tanha. The advertising industry exists to create new cravings you didn't know you had. Social media is engineered to addict us to the little dopamine hits of likes, shares, and positive comments. A thirst for pleasant sights and thoughts. Online shopping platforms with one-click purchasing make satisfying our material cravings frictionless and instantaneous. The food industry designs hyper-palatable foods that bypass our body's natural signals of fullness, leaving us craving more. We binge-watch entire seasons of television shows in a single weekend, thirsting for the next plot twist, the next emotional peak. Kama tanha is the endless scrolling, the constant search for the next distraction, the next high, the next fleeting moment of pleasure, to distract us from the underlying hum of our disquiet. We are relentlessly chasing sensory and mental candy, hoping it will nourish us, when it can only ever provide a momentary sugar rush followed by a crash. The second form of thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is bhavatana, the craving for existence or the craving to become. This is not just the basic instinct for survival, it is the deep, ego-driven need to be someone, to have a solid and lasting identity. It is the thirst that fuels our ambition, our relentless drive to climb ladders of status and success. We crave to become wealthier, more famous, more respected, more intelligent, more spiritual. This is the energy behind building a personal brand, curating a perfect image of our lives online, and anxiously monitoring how it is received. It's the deep-seated fear of being ordinary, of being a nobody. Bhavatanya is what makes us cling to our titles, our roles, and our accomplishments as if they were who we really are. A person might say, "I am a doctor," or "I am a successful entrepreneur." They have fused their identity with a temporary role. This thirst is a direct consequence of the terror of anatta, of the empty house. Because we sense on a subconscious level that our self is not solid, we frantically try to build it up from the outside. We try to add layers of armor possessions, achievements, reputation, followers to a ghost, hoping that with enough layers, it will finally become real. This thirst for becoming is what pits us against each other in endless competition and comparison, a source of immense stress, envy, and anxiety. The third form is the mirror image of the second. It is vibhava tanha, the craving for non-existence or annihilation. This is the pushing away impulse, the desperate desire to get rid of an unpleasant experience. This is not just about the most extreme form, suicide. Vibhavatana is a force we encounter every single day. It is the immediate urge to escape from a feeling of boredom by grabbing your phone. It is the craving to numb the pain of a difficult day at work with alcohol or drugs. It is the desire to annihilate a feeling of shame or embarrassment by distracting yourself with mindless entertainment. It is the anger that wishes a person who has wronged you would just disappear. Whenever we are faced with pain, discomfort, or an inconvenient truth, Vibhavatana arises as the frantic impulse to say, "I don't want this. Get it away from me. Make it stop." It is the craving to not be, to not feel, what we are currently feeling. This thirst fuels all our patterns of avoidance, denial, and addiction. It is the energy that makes us run from our own inner life, preventing us from ever sitting still long enough to find a genuine and lasting peace. It is essential to understand that this path is not about eradicating all desire. That would be impossible and undesirable. A distinction is made between tanha and a healthy, skillful desire, sometimes called chanda. The desire to be a good parent, the desire to create a beautiful work of art, the desire for all beings to be free from suffering. These are positive, wholesome impulses. The difference lies in the quality of the energy. Chanda is open, creative, and aspirational. Tanha is feverish, compulsive, and characterized by clinging. The key indicator is what happens when the desire is not fulfilled. With chanda, there may be disappointment, but it is accepted with grace. With tanha, the failure to get what we want leads to frustration, despair, and suffering. It feels like a personal affront, a threat to our very being, because the clinging ego has fused its sense of well-being with the outcome. To illustrate the self-defeating nature of tanha, imagine a person lost at sea on a small raft, dying of thirst under a burning sun. The ocean stretches to the horizon, a vast expanse of water. In a moment of madness and desperation, the person cups their hands, scoops up the ocean water, and drinks it greedily. For one brief, deceptive moment, the coolness soothes their parched throat. But this relief is instantly followed by a burning, agonizing thirst far worse than what they felt before. The salt desiccates their body from the inside, yet driven by the intensifying thirst, they drink more, and then more again, each drink sealing their fate and amplifying their agony. This is a perfect metaphor for our relationship with craving. We feel an existential thirst, a sense of lack. We try to quench it by drinking the salt water of sense pleasures and ego gratification. It provides a moment of relief, but it ultimately intensifies the underlying thirst, sending us back for more of the very thing that is causing us to suffer. This unquenchable thirst, in its three forms, is the restless, active force that keeps the wheel of suffering turning. It is the mind's constant, futile project of reaching and grasping in an attempt to find solid ground in a world of water and sand. It is the energy of pulling toward us, what we believe will complete us. But this is only half of the mind's reactive pattern. What happens when the world, as it inevitably does, presents us with something we find threatening, unpleasant, or painful? What is the mind's equal and opposite reaction to this pulling toward? This leads us to investigate the other side of this coin of delusion, the powerful contractive energy of pushing away, the force of aversion, resentment, and anger. If the unquenchable thirst of tanha is the frantic energy of pulling the world toward us, then its inseparable twin is the energy of violently pushing the world away. If craving is the hand that desperately reaches and grasps, this is the hand that forms a rigid fist to punch and reject. This is the second great reactive force that churns the waters of the mind into a raging storm. The ancient Pali word for this energy is dvesha. It is most often translated as aversion, anger, or hatred. But like its counterparts, its meaning encompasses a vast spectrum of human experience. It is the mind's primal and deeply conditioned reaction to anything it perceives as unpleasant, threatening, or painful. It is the raw contractive energy of number. It is the building of an invisible wall between ourselves and reality, a wall of resistance that, while intended to protect us, ultimately becomes our prison. This force of pushing away is as fundamental to our suffering as the force of pulling toward, and together they form the two primary poles of our discontent. When we hear words like anger or hatred, we tend to think of their most extreme and explosive forms: the shouting match, the act of violence, the bitter, consuming rage. While dvesha certainly includes these destructive expressions, its true power lies in its more subtle and constant presence in our daily lives. Aversion is the quiet impatience you feel when the person in front of you in the grocery line is taking too long. It is the flicker of irritation when a driver cuts you off in traffic. It is the cynical, dismissive thought that arises when you encounter an opinion you disagree with online. It is the judgmental glance you cast upon a stranger, the subtle prejudice that colors your perception before a single word is spoken. Dvesha is the cold shoulder you give a loved one after a disagreement, the silent treatment that is a form of passive aggression. It is the low-level, simmering resentment you hold toward a colleague who you feel has slighted you, a resentment that you replay in your mind, poisoning your own peace. It is the constant fault-finding, the habit of seeing what is wrong with a situation before seeing what is right. It is the harsh inner critic that attacks you for your own perceived flaws. All of these are manifestations of dvesha. They are all expressions of the mind's refusal to accept reality as it is when it is not to our liking. Each one is a small act of war against the present moment, and this constant, low-level warfare is utterly draining. The great tragedy of aversion is that, while it is almost always directed outward, its primary victim is always ourself. The Buddha used a powerful simile to describe this reality. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. This is not just a poetic metaphor, it is a literal, physiological, and psychological truth. When the mind is in a state of anger, irritation, or resentment, the body is flooded with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. The fight or flight system is activated. Your heart rate increases, your blood pressure rises, your muscles tense in preparation for a conflict, and your digestive and immune systems are suppressed. To hold a grudge, to marinate in resentment, is to voluntarily subject your own body to a slow drip poison. You are the one losing sleep. You are the one with the knot in your stomach. The other person, the object of your anger, may be completely unaware and unaffected, sleeping soundly while you are stewing in a toxic bath of your own creation. Mentally, aversion is just as corrosive. It acts like a powerful distorting lens, narrowing our perception and casting the entire world in a negative light. When we are angry, we cannot think clearly or creatively. We become trapped in rigid, black and white thinking, where we are the righteous victim and the other is the malevolent villain. We lose the capacity for empathy and nuance. Aversion consumes an enormous amount of mental energy that could be used for connection, creativity, learning, and joy. It is a fire that, seeking to burn another, consumes our own inner house first. To begin to work with this powerful energy, we must first become aware of what triggers it in our own lives. What are the specific situations, people, or ideas that reliably provoke our aversion. In the modern world, many of these triggers are deliberately engineered. News channels and social media algorithms have discovered that outrage is a powerful tool for engagement. They often present information in the most polarizing and emotionally charged way possible, feeding us a steady diet of things to be angry about, because an angry user is a user who stays on the platform longer. Interpersonally, our triggers are often rooted in our own insecurities. We may react with anger when someone criticizes us, because their words touch upon a deep-seated fear that what they are saying might be true. We may feel intense aversion to certain types of people because they represent qualities that we have repressed or denied in ourselves. Often, our anger toward a situation is a mask for a more vulnerable emotion underneath. We feel outrage at a global injustice because it touches our own feelings of powerlessness. We lash out at a loved one for a minor mistake because we are actually feeling scared or unappreciated. Becoming a student of our own triggers is a profound practice of self-awareness. It allows us to see the spark before it becomes a raging fire. There is a timeless story from the life of the Buddha that offers a radical perspective on how to deal with the anger of others, a way to stop the hot coal from ever reaching our hands. One day, while the Buddha was teaching, a man from a rival school of thought came to insult him. The man stood before the calm, seated figure and unleashed a torrent of the most vicious and abusive language imaginable. The Buddha did not react. He simply sat in silence, listening with a serene and patient awareness. The man continued until he was red in the face and breathless, exhausted by his own tirade. When he finally fell silent, the Buddha looked at him kindly and asked a simple question. "My friend," he said, "if you prepare a beautiful gift and you bring it to someone, but that person does not accept your gift, to whom does the gift then belong?" The man, taken aback by the unexpected question, thought for a moment and replied, "Well, if they don't accept it, it would still belong to me." The Buddha nodded gently. "Exactly so," he said. "Today, you have offered me a gift of insults, anger, and abuse. I do not accept it." This simple teaching is revolutionary. It reveals that the anger and negativity of another person only has power over us if we choose to accept it. It is their creation, their hot coal. We are not obligated to take it from their hands and burn ourselves. In the space between their words and our reaction, there is a moment of choice. We can choose to let the gift of their poison remain with them. We can now see that craving, tanha, and aversion, dvesha, are two sides of the same coin. They are the twin strategies of the illusory self, desperately trying to control an uncontrollable world. Tanha is the strategy of pulling pleasant experiences toward us to prop up the ego. Dvesha is the strategy of pushing unpleasant experiences away to defend the ego. Together, they are the frantic churning of the storm, the constant agitation of the mind that defines a life of suffering. We are either grasping or rejecting, pulling or pushing, in a ceaseless, exhausting dance of reactivity. This brings us to the deepest inquiry yet. If craving and aversion are the two sides of the coin, what is the coin itself made of? What is the fundamental condition of the mind that gives rise to this dysfunctional polarity? If these two forces are the symptoms, what is the underlying disease? To answer this, we must go to the very root of the storm, to the third and most foundational of the three poisons, the pervasive fog of misunderstanding that allows this whole painful drama to unfold. We must now investigate the nature of ignorance. We have now confronted the two great reactive forces of the mind. We have examined the unquenchable thirst of tanha, the energy of grasping and pulling the world toward us. We have faced its twin, the resentful energy of dvesha, the force of aversion that pushes the world away. We see them as the north and south poles of our inner turmoil, the constant oscillation between desire and disgust that keeps our minds in a state of perpetual agitation. This clarity leads us to the most fundamental question of all. What is the underlying condition that allows this painful duality to exist? What is the fertile ground in which these twin weeds of craving and aversion grow so relentlessly? To find the answer, we must go to the very root of the storm. We must investigate the third and most foundational of the three poisons that poison our peace. This is the pervasive, silent fog of the mind. Its name is moha, which translates as ignorance, delusion, or confusion. This is not ignorance in the common sense of being uneducated or lacking factual information. A person can hold advanced degrees and be a master of complex data, yet still be completely lost in the fog of moha. Moha is a far deeper blindness. It is a fundamental misperception of reality. It is the default setting of the untrained mind, a dream state in which we mistake illusions for truth, and in doing so, create the conditions for our own suffering. Moha is the failure to see things as they truly are. And what are things as they truly are? They are the very truths we have spent our time investigating. The fog of moha is the ignorance of anicca, impermanence. In this state of delusion, we live and act as if temporary states can be made permanent. We chase fleeting pleasures, invest in shifting identities, and build our homes on the banks of a constantly moving river, and then are shocked and devastated when the river inevitably washes them away. The fog of moha is the ignorance of anatta, no self. We live as if we are a solid, separate, independent entity, a fixed ego that needs to be defended, promoted, and gratified. We fail to see that we are a dynamic, interconnected process, a wave in the ocean of being. This mistaken identity is the source of our deepest anxieties, our loneliness, and our conflicts. And finally, the fog of moha is the ignorance of dukkha, the pervasive nature of unsatisfactoriness. We continually seek ultimate, lasting happiness in conditioned, temporary, and impersonal phenomena, a quest that is doomed from the start. We are like a person trying to find fresh water in a salt-filled sea. Moha is not a lack of knowledge in the head, it is a lack of wisdom in the heart. It is the veil that prevents us from seeing these three fundamental characteristics of existence in our own direct experience. From this single deep root of misunderstanding, the twin trunks of craving and aversion grow. Moha is the direct cause of both. Let us look at how this works. Why do we crave? Why does the thirst of tanha arise? It arises directly from ignorance. We desperately crave a new luxury car because, in the fog of moha, we are blind to anicca. We operate under the delusion that the pleasure and status it confers will be stable and lasting. We are ignorant of the fact that the thrill will fade, the car will age, and it will become just another object of worry. We crave the car because we are blind to anatta. We believe this external object will add to and solidify our phantom self, making me more valuable and secure. We are ignorant of the fact that no external object can ever fill the void of a mistaken identity. Our craving is a direct symptom of our inability to see the impermanent, selfless, and ultimately unsatisfactory nature of the object we desire. Now, let us look at aversion. Why does dvesha arise? It too is born directly from ignorance. We react with such intense anger when our opinion is challenged, because, in the fog of moha, we are blind to anatta. We have fused our identity with our opinions, so an attack on our idea feels like an attack on the very core of our being. We are defending a ghost. We recoil in fear and hatred from a painful experience because we are blind to anicca. We believe the pain will last forever if we don't violently push it away, failing to see that all feelings, even the most painful, are impermanent waves that will naturally recede if we give them space. Our aversion is a direct symptom of our delusion that we are a solid thing that needs protection, and that we can somehow engineer a life free from all discomfort. Moha is the darkness in the room. In that darkness, we mistake a rope for a snake, dvesha, and a pile of rags for a treasure, tanha. The entire drama of our suffering is a play staged in the theatre of ignorance. There is a classic Indian parable that perfectly illustrates the nature of moha. It is the story of the blind men and the elephant. A king in a faraway land brought an elephant to his palace and invited a group of men who had been born blind to experience it. He led them to the great animal and asked each one to describe it. The first man reached out and his hands touched the elephant's broad, sturdy leg. "I see," he declared confidently. "An elephant is like a great, living pillar." The second man's hands found the elephant's long, writhing trunk. He snatched his hands back in surprise. "No, you are wrong," he said. "An elephant is clearly like a thick, powerful snake." The third man happened to grasp the elephant's thin, swishing tail. "You are both mistaken," he proclaimed. "An elephant is exactly like a rope." A fourth man touched the massive, flapping ear and said, "It is obvious to anyone who can feel that an elephant is like a large, rough fan." A fifth touched the smooth, sharp tusk and described it as a spear. Soon, The men were embroiled in a furious argument, each one completely certain of their own partial experience, and each one calling the others fools and liars. They were all right, in a limited way, and they were all completely wrong. This is a perfect portrait of humanity, lost in the fog of moha. Each of us grasps our own tiny, conditioned piece of reality or beliefs, our political views, our personal history, our sense of self, and we mistake it for the whole truth. We are the blind men, absolutely certain of our limited perspective and unable to see the magnificent, complex, and whole elephant of reality as it truly is. If moha is the fog, what is the sun that can burn it away? The antidote to ignorance is not more information, but a different way of knowing. The antidote is wisdom. In Pali, this is panya. In Sanskrit, prajna. This wisdom is not the intellectual accumulation of facts. It is a direct, intuitive, and penetrating insight into the nature of things. It is the clear seeing of anicca, anatta, and dukkha in one's own heart and mind. It is the moment when the blind men are suddenly granted sight, and for the first time, see the entire elephant. This wisdom is not something to be imported from the outside. It is not about believing what the Buddha said. It is about using the teachings as a guide to cultivate the seed of wisdom that lies dormant within every human being. This clear seeing is developed through the dedicated practice of calming the mind and observing our experience with a curious and non-judgmental attention. It is the fruit of mindfulness and investigation. We have now completed our diagnosis of the storm within. We have seen that the condition is dukkha, a fundamental unsatisfactoriness. We have identified its causes, the three poisons that feed each other in a vicious cycle, the grasping of tanha, the pushing of dvesha, and the foundational blindness of moha that gives rise to them both. To some, this diagnosis might seem bleak or negative, but in truth, it is the most hopeful message imaginable. In medicine, a clear and accurate diagnosis is not a cause for despair. It is the absolute prerequisite for a cure. A doctor who fully understands a disease and its root causes is a doctor who can write a precise and effective prescription. The work of diagnosis is finished. We have looked the storm in the eye, we have mapped its currents, and we have understood the forces that give it its terrifying power. Now, with this clarity as our foundation, we can turn from the problem to the solution. We can unfold the ancient map that shows the way out of the fog, the path that stills the storm. We can now begin to explore the practical, life-altering prescription for healing this condition, the Noble Eightfold Path. We have journeyed together into the darkness, not to despair, but to understand. We have held a lamp up to the nature of our inner storm, the disquiet of dukkha. We have traced its origins to the powerful currents of craving, tanha, and aversion, dvesha. And we have seen that these currents are born from a deep and pervasive fog, the fundamental ignorance of moha. The diagnosis is now complete. To have a clear diagnosis of an ailment is the first and most hopeful step toward a cure. It is a moment not for resignation, but for empowerment, because the Buddha, in his profound wisdom, did not stop with the diagnosis. Having identified the cause of our suffering, he then laid out a clear, practical, and comprehensive path to its cessation. He provided a map. This map, this prescription for healing the human heart, is known as the Noble Eightfold Path. It is a guide for the journey from the tangled shore of suffering to the far shore of liberation, a journey that every one of us has the capacity to make. This is not a path of blind faith, but a path of practice, a way of living that addresses every facet of our being, transforming our confusion into clarity, our anxiety into peace, and our suffering into freedom. Before we explore the 8 specific components of this map, we must understand its guiding principle, the spirit in which the entire journey is undertaken. This is the principle of the middle way. The Buddha's own life was a testament to this discovery. He was born a prince, Siddhartha Gautama, and spent his early years surrounded by every conceivable form of sensual pleasure. He had the finest clothes, the most delicious foods, beautiful music, and was shielded from all sights of sickness, old age, and death. He lived in the extreme of hedonism and self-indulgence. Yet, he found that even with every desire satisfied, a profound sense of dissatisfaction, of dukkha, remained. He saw the ultimate emptiness of chasing fleeting pleasures, and so he left the palace and threw himself into the opposite extreme. He became a wandering ascetic, practicing severe self-mortification. He starved his body, held his breath until his head felt like it would explode, and pushed himself to the very brink of death, believing that by punishing the body, he could liberate the spirit. But this too, he realized, was a dead end. A mind housed in a weakened, tortured body could not achieve the clarity and strength needed for enlightenment. His great awakening occurred when he remembered a moment from his childhood, sitting peacefully under a rose apple tree, and realized that the path to peace lay not in extreme indulgence, nor in extreme self-denial, but in a balanced and skillful middle. The perfect illustration for this is the simile of the lute string. The Buddha once advised a monk who was struggling with his practice, a monk who had been a skilled musician in his lay life. He asked him, "If you tighten the string of your lute too much, what happens?" The monk replied, "It will snap." "And if you leave the string too loose?" the Buddha asked. "It will not make a sound," said the monk. The beautiful music, the Buddha concluded, comes only when the string is tuned, just right, not too tight and not too loose. This is the spirit of the Eightfold Path. It is a call to find that skillful balance in our own lives, to avoid the extremes of laziness and aggression, of indulgence and self-punishment. It is a path of gentle, persistent, and intelligent effort. To make this comprehensive path easier to understand, its 8 factors are traditionally grouped into 3 essential trainings. The first is the training in ethical conduct, or Shila. This is the foundation of the path. It is about learning to live in a way that is harmless to ourselves and to others. It is the recognition that our inner peace is profoundly affected by our outer actions. If our speech is harmful and our actions are unskillful, we create conflict and agitation in our lives, making it impossible for the mind to become calm. This training purifies our relationship with the world and includes 3 factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. The second training is in mental discipline, or samadhi. Once we have established a foundation of ethical living, we can turn our attention inward to the direct training of the mind. Our minds are often compared to a wild monkey, jumping restlessly from thought to thought, dragged here and there by every impulse and distraction. This training is the process of taming that monkey mind. It is about developing mental and emotional strength, cultivating a stable and focused awareness, and learning to be the master of our inner world rather than its slave. This training includes 3 factors: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. The third training is in wisdom, or prajna. When the mind has been calmed and steadied through mental discipline, and our life is harmonious through ethical conduct, a new possibility emerges. We can begin to see reality clearly, free from the distortions of our cravings and aversions. This clear seeing is wisdom. It is the direct, experiential antidote to the fog of ignorance, moha. It is the ability to see for ourselves the truth of impermanence, no self, and the nature of suffering and its end. This training is the ultimate goal of the path and includes 2 factors: right view and right intention. It is crucial to understand that these are not 8 sequential steps, like rungs on a ladder that you climb one at a time. It is a profound misunderstanding to think, first I will perfect my speech, then I will perfect my actions, and only then will I begin to practice mindfulness. Rather, the 8 factors of the path are like the individual strands of a single, strong rope. They are all woven together, and each one supports and strengthens all the others. They are to be cultivated simultaneously, each one contributing to a synergistic upward spiral of growth. For example, the practice of right speech, speaking truthfully and kindly, is part of ethical conduct. When we do this, we create less external conflict, which means our minds are less agitated. A less agitated mind finds it much easier to practice right mindfulness. And as our mindfulness deepens, we begin to see our own intentions more clearly, which helps us to cultivate right intention, a factor of wisdom. As our wisdom grows, and we see the harm caused by harsh words, our commitment to right speech is naturally strengthened. Each part of the path informs and enhances every other part. The journey is a holistic one, a gradual cultivation of a complete way of being. Finally, it must be emphasized that this is a path of practice, not a system of belief. The Buddha did not present the Eightfold Path as a set of dogmas or commandments that must be accepted on blind faith. His invitation was always one of personal discovery. He was like a physician who says, "Based on my diagnosis, this is the course of treatment I recommend. It involves this diet, this exercise, and this medicine. Please, do not simply believe me. Follow the prescription diligently and see for yourself if your health improves." This path is the prescription. It is an invitation to conduct an experiment in the laboratory of your own life. It empowers you to become your own scientist, your own explorer, verifying the truth for yourself through your own direct experience. The goal is not to become a Buddhist. The goal is to become an awakened human being. So here we have it, the ancient map, a complete and integrated system for human flourishing. It is the way to walk out of the fog of ignorance and into the clear light of wisdom, to still the inner storm and discover a peace that is not dependent on external conditions. Now that we have seen the entire map laid out before us, we must ask, where do we begin? Where do we place our first footstep on this path? Any great journey requires a clear sense of direction, a North Star to navigate by. The entire enterprise of walking the path depends on having a correct understanding of where we are going and why. Therefore, our detailed exploration must begin with the very foundation of wisdom, the guiding light for the entire journey. We must begin with right view, having been given the map of the Noble Eightfold Path, a comprehensive guide for our journey out of suffering. We must now learn how to read it. The first and most crucial instruction on this map, the North Star, by which all other navigation is guided, is right view. In Pali, it is called Samma Ditthi. This is the starting point and the constant companion of the entire path. To cultivate right view is to learn to see the world, ourselves, and our experiences, not through the distorted lens of our fears and desires, not through the fog of ignorance, but through the clear lens of wisdom. It is about aligning our perspective with the fundamental nature of reality. Without a correct view, our efforts on the path will be misguided. We would be like a traveler setting out with great energy and determination, but with a faulty map, heading in the wrong direction, only to become more deeply lost in the wilderness. Right view ensures that our effort, our speech, our actions, and our mindfulness are all oriented toward the true goal, the cessation of suffering and the realization of lasting peace. At its core, right view is the simple, honest acceptance of the diagnosis the Buddha gave for the human condition. It is the embracing of the framework known as the Four Noble Truths. This framework is not a set of depressing beliefs to be adopted, but a clear-eyed, medical-style assessment of our situation. The first aspect of right view is to see the truth of dukkha. This is the courageous acknowledgement that our lives, as long as they are governed by ignorance, are characterized by a fundamental unsatisfactoriness. It is seeing the subtle and overt suffering in our lives without denial or romanticization. It is the sober recognition that there is a problem to be solved. The second aspect is to see the truth of the origin of dukkha. This is the clear understanding that our suffering is not random, nor is it a punishment from an external force. It arises from identifiable causes within our own minds, the unquenchable thirst of craving and the bitter resistance of aversion, all rooted in a fundamental ignorance. This view is incredibly empowering because it brings the problem out of the realm of mystery and into the realm of cause and effect. This leads directly to the third aspect of right view, the most hopeful of all, to see the truth of the cessation of dukkha. This is the profound realization that if suffering has a cause, its end is also possible. If the fire of suffering is fueled by our clinging and aversion, then when that fuel is removed, the fire must go out. This is the understanding that a state of profound peace, freedom, and an end to sufferinga state, called nirvana, a genuine possibility for any human being. It is not a myth or a far-off heaven, but the potential of our own minds when they are purified. Finally, the fourth aspect of right view is to see the truth of the path. This is the understanding that there exists a practical, step-by-step method to get from the origin of suffering to its cessation. That method is the Noble Eightfold Path itself. To hold right view, in its most basic form, is to accept this clear and logical framework. There is a disease, it has a cause, a cure is possible, and here is the medicine. A further essential component of right view is a correct understanding of the law of karma. In the popular imagination, karma is often misunderstood as a system of cosmic fate or divine retribution. In reality, it is a simple, impersonal, natural law, much like the law of gravity. The word karma literally means action, and the law refers specifically to the consequences of our intentional actions. Right view understands that actions driven by wholesome intentions rooted in generosity, loving kindness, and clarity, will inevitably lead to positive and happy results for ourselves and for others. Conversely, actions driven by unskillful intentions, rooted in the three poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion, will inevitably lead to suffering and painful results. This is not a judgment from on high. It is a simple law of nature. If you plant a seed of kindness, you will, in time, harvest a fruit of connection and joy. If you plant a seed of anger, you will, in time, harvest a fruit of isolation and pain. This understanding is profoundly empowering because it dismantles any sense of victimhood. It places the responsibility for our happiness squarely in our own hands. While we cannot control everything that happens to us, right view illuminates that we have immense power over our experience through the intentions we choose to cultivate and act upon, moment by moment. Right view is also the consistent practice of seeing the world through the lens of the three marks of existence, which we have already explored. It is one thing to understand anicca, anatta, and dukkha as concepts. It is another to integrate them as a living view. A person cultivating right view learns to look at a moment of triumph and success and see its impermanent nature. They enjoy it without clinging to it, knowing it is a passing wave. They look at a moment of harsh criticism or personal failure, and instead of reacting with egoic defensiveness, they see the illusion of the solid self that feels attacked. They recognize the impersonal nature of the experience. They learn to look at both the highs and the lows of life and see the inherent unsatisfactoriness of seeking permanent shelter in any of it. This perspective doesn't make one cold or detached. On the contrary, it fosters a deep and unflappable equanimity, a peace that is not shaken by the constant comings and goings of worldly fortune. It is crucial to understand that right view is not a static belief system. It is a developing wisdom. Initially, it may begin as what is called conceptual right view. We hear these teachings, they resonate with us, and we accept them as a working hypothesis. We decide to try on this new way of seeing the world. This is like being given the map and deciding to trust it. But as we walk the path, particularly as we cultivate mindfulness and concentration, this conceptual view begins to transform into a deep, experiential wisdom. We don't just believe that things are impermanent, we feel it in the rising and falling of our own breath. We don't just believe in the concept of no-self, we experience moments where the sense of a separate I dissolves, leaving only open awareness. This mature, experiential right view is the very wisdom that cuts through the fog of ignorance at its root. There is a wise old story about a farmer that illustrates the folly of our ordinary, limited view compared to the spaciousness of right view. One day, the farmer's only horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him, saying, "What terrible luck." The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned, bringing with it a dozen wild horses. The neighbors rushed over to celebrate. "What wonderful luck!" they exclaimed. The farmer again replied, "Maybe." A few days later, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and broke his leg. The neighbors came to offer their sympathy. "How awful," they said. "What a tragedy." The farmer calmly responded, "Maybe." The following week, the army came through the village, conscripting all the able-bodied young men for a dangerous war. The farmer's son, because of his broken leg, was the only one left behind. This story shows how quick we are to label events as good or bad, based on our narrow, short-term perspective. Right view is like the farmer's maybe. It is a humble wisdom that refrains from premature judgment, that understands the vast, interconnected web of causes and effects, and that trusts that even painful events can be a part of a larger, unseen unfolding. Right view, then, is our compass and our guide. It is the understanding that liberates the mind, replacing confusion with clarity and delusion with wisdom. It transforms our life from a series of chaotic, random happenings into a meaningful path of practice and discovery. But a map and a compass, no matter how perfect, are of little use if we do not consciously align our direction of travel with them. Once we have this clear view of the landscape and our destination, the next essential step is to adjust the rudder of our own heart. We must align our deepest motivations and aspirations with the wisdom we have begun to cultivate. Our inner compass must point toward the North Star of our new view. This brings us directly to the next factor of the path, the cultivation of right intention. Having oriented ourselves with the clear map of right view, we now stand at a crucial juncture. A map is a tool of the intellect. It shows us the terrain and the destination, but a journey requires more than a map. It requires a heart set on the destination. It requires a decision, a commitment, a conscious steering of our energy in the right direction. This is the function of the second factor of the path, right intention, or samyak sankalpa. If right view is the seeing of the mind, right intention is the aspiring of the heart. It is the rudder that we use to steer the ship of our life according to the chart that right view has provided. It is the bridge between our understanding and our actions. It asks the vital question: now that we see things more clearly, what kind of life do we want to live? What qualities of heart do we want to cultivate? Right intention is the conscious process of aligning our deepest motivations with the liberating truths of wisdom, turning our inner world away from the toxic landscape of the three poisons and toward the open horizon of freedom. The power of our intention cannot be overstated. In the Buddhist understanding of karma, it is the intention, the why behind an action, that is the most significant factor in determining its result. The outer world may see two actions that look identical, but the inner world, the world of our own heart and mind, experiences them in vastly different ways depending on the motivation. Imagine two people each donating $1,000 to a charity for the homeless. The first person does so with the intention of being praised publicly, of having their name on a plaque, and of receiving a tax benefit. Their action is rooted in ego gratification and self-interest. Internally, their mind is filled with anxiety about whether they will be recognized and comparison with other donors. The second person makes the same donation anonymously, motivated by a genuine feeling of compassion and a simple wish to alleviate the suffering of others. Their action is rooted in goodwill and generosity. Internally, their mind is filled with a quiet joy that arises from the act itself, regardless of any outcome or recognition. The external act is the same, the karmic seed planted in the heart, and the immediate quality of their experience are worlds apart. Right intention is the practice of consciously planting seeds of generosity, kindness, and clarity, rather than seeds of greed, ill will, and confusion. The tradition guides us by outlining three specific types of right intention. These are three directions in which we consciously learn to steer our hearts, each one acting as a direct antidote to one of the three poisons. The first is the intention of renunciation. For the modern ear, the word renunciation can sound harsh and joyless, conjuring images of self-deprivation and a rejection of life. This is a profound misunderstanding. In this context, renunciation is better understood as the intention of letting go. It is not about giving up the things of the world, but about renouncing our clinging to them. It is the wise and peaceful aspiration to find happiness not in the frantic accumulation of external things, but in the cultivation of inner contentment and simplicity. This is the direct antidote to the poison of tanha, or craving. We see the endless, exhausting cycle of chasing sense pleasures and ego gratification, the cycle of the man drinking salt water, and we form a gentle intention to step off that treadmill. It is the aspiration to release our addiction to stimulation, to untangle ourselves from obsessive desires, and to find a rich and satisfying freedom in needing less. It is the intention to trade the fleeting, agitated pleasure of getting what we want for the deep, abiding peace of being content with what we have. The second wholesome direction for the heart is the intention of goodwill, or avyapada. This is the powerful aspiration to meet the world and all the beings in it with a heart of friendliness, kindness, and warmth. It is the direct and potent antidote to the poison of dvesha, or aversion. Our default conditioning is often to react to unpleasantness with irritation, anger, resentment, or ill will. The intention of goodwill is the conscious choice to cultivate the opposite response. It is the commitment to actively replace thoughts of hatred with thoughts of friendship, to replace the desire for revenge with the wish for another's well-being, to replace impatience with patience. This is not a passive state, it is an active practice. When you are stuck in traffic and feeling frustrated, you can consciously form the intention, may all of us on this road be safe and free from stress. When a colleague says something that hurts you, Instead of immediately descending into resentment, you can take a breath and form the intention. Just like me, this person wants to be happy and free from suffering. May they be well. This practice may feel artificial at first, but with persistence, it begins to rewire the very circuits of our heart, transforming our inner landscape from a battlefield of us versus them into a welcoming space of connection. The third aspect of right intention is the intention of harmlessness, or avihisa. This is the great and compassionate aspiration to cause no harm in thought, word, or deed to any living being, including ourselves. It is the bedrock of all ethical behavior. This intention flows directly from the right view of anatta and our profound interconnectedness. When we truly begin to see that the separation between self and other is an illusion, the idea of intentionally harming another becomes as absurd as wanting to injure our own hand. The intention of harmlessness is the antidote to the energies of cruelty, aggression, and indifference. It means cultivating a sensitivity to the suffering of others, from the smallest insect to the most difficult human being. It also, crucially, means turning that same gentleness and care toward ourselves. It is the intention to abandon the habit of harsh self-criticism, to let go of self-destructive patterns, and to treat ourselves with the same compassion we would offer to a dear friend. It is the recognition that violence toward the self and violence toward others spring from the same deluded root. Cultivating these three intentions is like becoming a skilled gardener of the heart. It is not a single act, but a continuous, moment-to-moment process. We must first learn to recognize the weeds as they sprout in the soil of our minds. A thought of greed arises, a flicker of ill will, a desire to cause harm through a sharp word. Through mindfulness, we learn to spot these unskillful intentions as they appear. The second step is to gently remove the weed. We don't do this with violence or self-hatred. I'm such a bad person for thinking that. That would only be planting more weeds of aversion. Instead, we see the unwholesome intention with clarity and understanding. We recognize its painful nature, and we gently let it go. The third step is to consciously plant and water the flowers. We intentionally cultivate thoughts of generosity, of loving kindness, of compassion. We can actively bring to mind a wish for someone's well-being. We can consciously choose a gentler inner response to a difficult situation over time. As we consistently remove the weeds and nurture the flowers, the entire garden of our heart begins to change. The wholesome qualities become stronger and more spontaneous, and the unwholesome qualities weaken and arise less frequently. With right view, we have been given the correct map. With right intention, we have now set our inner compass to point toward our destination of wisdom and compassion. Our mind and heart are aligned. We have a clear understanding of the journey and a genuine aspiration to undertake it. The inner work of the wisdom training has set the stage. Now, we must begin to walk. The path must move from the internal realm of seeing and intending into the external world of living and acting. How do we translate this inner alignment into our daily conduct? The first and most immediate bridge between our inner world and the outer world is our speech. The very breath that carries our intentions outward is shaped into the words we use. Therefore, our journey into skillful living must begin with an exploration of the profound and transformative practice of right speech. With a mind oriented by right view and a heart aspiring with right intention, we arrive at the first step on the path of action. We begin to translate our inner cultivation into our life in the world. The bridge between our internal world and the external world, the first and most constant way our intentions become manifest, is through our speech. Words are not mere sounds, they are powerful forces. A single word can start a war or declare peace. It can break a heart or inspire a generation. Words can be weapons that leave wounds deeper than any blade, or they can be medicine that soothes and heals. Recognizing this immense power, the practice of samyak vak, or right speech, becomes the essential first training in ethical conduct. It is a profound practice of mindfulness, a way of guarding the gate of our mouth so that what emerges is a reflection of our wisdom and compassion, not our reactivity and ignorance. This practice is not about becoming timid, silent, or censored. It is about becoming skillful, conscious, and deliberate, using this incredible power we possess to create harmony and happiness rather than conflict and suffering. The tradition gives us a beautifully clear and practical framework for this practice, outlining 4 aspects of speech to abstain from, and by extension, 4 positive qualities to cultivate. Think of these as 4 gates through which all of our speech must pass before it enters the world. The first is the gate of truth. This is the commitment to abstain from false speech. At its most basic level, this means not telling lies. Lying creates a fundamental split between our inner reality and our outer presentation. To maintain a lie requires immense mental energy. We must remember the lie, build further lies to support it, and live with the constant, low-level stress of being discovered. It creates a complex, fragile world of our own making, a world that isolates us and erodes our own self-respect. Truthfulness, in contrast, creates simplicity and freedom. When our words are aligned with what we know to be true, our inner and outer worlds become integrated. This builds trust with others, but more importantly, it builds trust with ourselves. We become a person of integrity, someone whose word is reliable. This doesn't mean being brutally or unskillfully honest. As we will see, truth must always be balanced with the other gates, but it establishes a firm foundation. Our speech will be grounded in reality, not in deception. The second is the gate of harmony. This is the practice of abstaining from slanderous or divisive speech. This is the poison of using words to set people against one another. It includes obvious slander, but more commonly, it manifests as gossip, backbiting, and spreading rumors. When we speak negatively about someone who is not present, we are planting seeds of discord. We are damaging their reputation, creating suspicion, and contributing to a culture of negativity. On a deeper level, this act feeds our own ego by creating a false sense of superiority or intimacy with the person we are speaking to. The practice of right speech invites us to become a force for harmony. This means making a conscious choice not to participate in gossip. When others begin to speak ill of someone, we can skillfully change the subject or simply remain silent. The positive cultivation here is to use speech to bring people together. We can speak of the good qualities of others. We can try to explain one person's perspective to another to foster understanding. We can choose to be a uniter, not a divider, using our words to weave a web of connection rather than to tear it apart. The third, and perhaps most challenging gate, is the gate of kindness. This is the commitment to abstain from harsh speech. Words can be used as weapons, and harsh speech includes yelling, insulting, name-calling, belittling, shaming, and cruel sarcasm. These words are born from anger and aversion, and their only purpose is to cause pain. The wounds they create can last a lifetime, long after a physical bruise has faded. This practice also applies to the voice of our own inner critic. For many of us, the harshest words we hear all day are the ones we say to ourselves in the privacy of our own minds. The cultivation of right speech is the cultivation of gentleness, both inward and outward. It doesn't mean we can never disagree, give difficult feedback, or say no, but it means we learn to do so with respect and care, with the intention to communicate our truth without causing unnecessary harm. It is the practice of asking, is there a kinder way to say this? Can I express my point without attacking the person? It is the art of speaking the truth with love. The fourth and final gate is the gate of purpose. This is the practice of abstaining from idle chatter. This guideline is often misunderstood as a call to be stern and silent. It is not. Joyful, light-hearted conversation can be deeply purposeful if its purpose is to create connection and happiness. Rather, this is an invitation to be mindful of the vast amount of our speech that is simply noise. It is the mindless talking that fills space, the repetitive complaining, the speculative chatter about things we know nothing about, the endless commentary on the trivial. This kind of speech scatters our mental energy. It is a form of distraction, a way to avoid being present with ourselves and our reality. The practice here is to cultivate a sense of purpose in our communication. Before speaking, we can ask ourselves, is what I am about to say beneficial? Is it useful? Is it interesting? Does it create connection? Does it bring comfort? This leads to a natural quieting of the mind. We begin to value silence, not as an absence, but as a space of peace and potential. We speak less, but what we say has more weight, more meaning, and more positive impact. To truly master right speech, however, we must realize that it is only half of communication. The other, often neglected half, is right listening. The practice of deep listening is an essential part of right speech. Often, when another person is speaking, we are not truly listening. We are busy formulating our response, waiting for our turn to talk, judging their words, or thinking about something else entirely. Deep listening means offering another person the rare and precious gift of our full, non-judgmental attention. It is listening not just to their words, but to the feelings and intentions behind them. It is listening to understand, not to win an argument. This kind of listening is a powerful act of compassion. It can dissolve conflict, heal relationships, and make the other person feel truly seen and heard. In practicing deep listening, we create the space for others to engage in right speech themselves. In our digital age, these principles are more relevant than ever. The screen provides a veil of anonymity that can easily disinhibit our unskillful tendencies. On social media, the temptations for harsh speech in the form of outrage and public shaming, divisive speech in the form of political polarization, false speech in the form of misinformation, and idle chatter in the form of endless scrolling are immense. The practice of right speech is to bring the 4 gates to our keyboard. Before we post, comment, or share, we must pause. Is this true? Is this kind? Is this harmonious? Is this purposeful? A single mindful pause can prevent immense harm and regret. A simple way to remember this entire practice is found in a story about the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates. One day, an acquaintance ran up to him excitedly and said, "Socrates, do you know what I just heard about one of your friends?" "Hold on a moment," Socrates replied. "Before you tell me, I'd like you to put your news through a little test. It's called the test of the 3 sieves. The first sieve," he said, "is truth. Are you absolutely certain that what you are about to tell me is true?" The man admitted he had only heard it as a rumor. "All right," said Socrates, "let's try the second sieve, the sieve of goodness. Is what you are about to tell me something good?" "No, on the contrary," the man began. "So," Socrates interrupted, "you want to tell me something bad about him, and you're not even sure it's true?" The man grew embarrassed. "Let's use the third sieve, the sieve of usefulness. Is what you want to tell me going to be useful to me?" "No, not really," the man admitted. "Well," concluded Socrates, "if what you want to tell me is neither true, nor good, nor useful, why tell it to me at all?" This is the heart of right speech. It is a practice of mindful integrity that purifies our relationship with the world and with ourselves. By guarding our words, we take a momentous step in guarding our minds. And once we have begun to align what we say with our wholesome intentions, the path naturally invites us to broaden this alignment to encompass all of our physical behaviors. From our words, we move to our deeds. This brings us to the next vital element of ethical living, the practice of right action. Having begun to tame the tongue through the practice of right speech, we now broaden the scope of our ethical cultivation to include the actions of the body. Our words are the first expression of our intentions, but our physical deeds are what leave the most tangible footprints on the world. This is the practice of samyak karmanta, or right action. It flows naturally from right view and right intention, asking us to embody our wholesome aspirations in everything we do. If right intention sets the compass of the heart, right action is the careful, mindful walking of the path. The guiding principle here, as in all ethical conduct, is avihisa, harmlessness. It is the conscious commitment to move through the world with a presence that is gentle, protective, and fundamentally peaceful, ensuring that our actions become a source of safety and well-being for ourselves and all other beings, rather than a cause of fear and harm. The tradition outlines 3 primary areas of conduct that form the pillars of right action. These are not arbitrary rules, but practical guidelines designed to prevent the most common forms of harm and to cultivate the wholesome qualities that lead to peace. The first of these is the commitment to abstain from taking life. This is the most fundamental expression of harmlessness. At its most obvious level, it is the clear and unwavering commitment not to kill another human being. But the spirit of this precept extends much further. It is an invitation to cultivate a deep reverence for all life, recognizing that every being, from the most complex mammal to the simplest insect, shares the same fundamental desire to live and to avoid pain. This doesn't necessarily mean everyone must adopt a specific diet, but it does mean cultivating a conscious sensitivity to the impact of our actions on the creatures with whom we share this planet. On a practical level, this intention can manifest in countless small ways. It is the choice to rescue a spider and release it outside rather than crush it. It is the careful driving that avoids hitting animals on the road. On a broader scale, it is supporting efforts that protect habitats and prevent cruelty. The positive cultivation here is not just non-killing, but the active protection of life. It is to become a guardian, a source of safety, a person whose very presence is non-threatening and gentle. The second pillar of right action is the commitment to abstain from taking what is not given. This is the practice of respecting the property and resources of others. Again, its most obvious meaning is to refrain from stealing, robbing, or cheating. But in our complex modern world, the subtler forms of this unskillful action are far more common. It is taking office supplies for personal use. It is wasting hours of company time on personal browse, a form of time theft. It is finding a loophole to avoid paying your fair share for a service. It is taking credit for a colleague's work or idea. It is downloading copyrighted music or software without permission. Each of these small acts, while seeming insignificant, erodes our own integrity and is rooted in a mind of scarcity and greed. The opposite of taking what is not given is not merely restraint. It is the active and joyful cultivation of generosity, or dana. It is the practice of giving freely, without expecting anything in return. We can be generous with our material possessions, with our time, with our energy, with our kind words, and with our listening ear. Generosity is a direct antidote to the poison of greed. It opens the heart and dissolves the illusion of a separate self that needs to hoard resources. Hand in hand with generosity comes the cultivation of contentment, the practice of finding joy and satisfaction in what we already have. When we are truly content, the frantic desire to acquire more, to take from others, simply withers away at its root. The third pillar of right action is the commitment to abstain from sexual misconduct. This is perhaps the most personal and often the most misunderstood of the precepts. It is not a puritanical rejection of sexuality, which is a natural and potentially beautiful part of human life. This guideline is framed, like all the others, by the single, crucial question: does this action cause harm? Right action in the realm of sexuality is about ensuring that our conduct is free from exploitation, coercion, and deceit. It means we do not use others merely as objects for our own gratification. It means respecting the boundaries and consent of our partners. For those in committed relationships, it means honoring the agreements of fidelity and trust that form the foundation of that bond. It means not engaging in actions that would cause pain and suffering to our partner or to a third party, such as the partner of someone we might become involved with. The core of this practice is to bring mindfulness, kindness, honesty, and mutual respect into this powerful and intimate area of our lives. It is about ensuring that our sexuality becomes a source of genuine connection and affection, rather than a source of suffering, betrayal, and regret for ourselves or for others. Every action we perform, no matter how small, is a seed that we plant. An act of impulsive anger plants a seed of agitation in our own mind, and a seed of fear in the mind of another. An act of quiet generosity plants a seed of joy in our own heart, and a seed of gratitude in the world. Our lives are the cumulative harvest of the countless seeds we plant every single day. Right action is the practice of becoming a conscious and skillful gardener of our own karma. It is paying attention to our actions in every domain of life: how we drive our car, how we consume resources, how we interact with service staff, how we care for our bodies and our environment. Each moment presents a choice to plant a wholesome or an unwholesome seed. Lest we feel that our past unskillful actions have defined us forever, there is a powerful story from the life of the Buddha that speaks to the immense, transformative potential of right action. It is the story of a man named Angulimala, whose name meant finger garland. He was a fearsome bandit who terrorized a whole region, murdering travelers and cutting off one of their fingers to add to the gruesome necklace he wore. He was so feared that villagers would flee at the mere mention of his name. One day, the Buddha, despite all warnings, began to walk calmly down the road that led into Angulimala's territory. Angulimala saw him and was astonished at his fearlessness. He began to run after the Buddha, shouting at him to stop. But though he ran as fast as he could not catch up to the calmly walking monk. Exhausted and enraged, he finally yelled, "Stop, monk!" The Buddha, still walking, turned and said, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." The words struck the murderer like a bolt of lightning. He understood at once that the Buddha had stopped the cycle of violence and hatred, while he himself was still running frantically on the wheel of suffering. In that moment, something broke open inside him. He threw down his weapons, prostrated himself at the Buddha's feet, and begged to be accepted as a follower. He renounced his violent past completely, and, through dedicated practice, utterly transformed his mind, eventually becoming a fully enlightened and peaceful being. This story is a profound reminder that no matter how dark our past, the commitment to right action in the present moment holds the power to redeem and liberate us completely. Right action, then, is the practice of making our physical presence in the world a blessing rather than a curse. Together with right speech, it creates a life of profound integrity, a life where our outer conduct is a true and beautiful reflection of our highest inner intentions. This external harmony creates a stable, peaceful, and trustworthy foundation that is essential for the deeper work of training the mind. Having now examined what we say and what we do, the path logically leads us to consider the primary activity that occupies the majority of our waking lives for many years, the way we support ourselves. How can we ensure that the work we do to earn a living is not in conflict with these core principles of harmlessness? This question brings us to the third and final element of ethical conduct, the vital practice of right livelihood. Having aligned our speech and our physical actions with the principles of harmlessness and compassion, the path now invites us to examine the one activity that, for most of us, consumes the largest portion of our waking lives, our work. For 8 or more hours a day, 5 days a week, for decades of our lives, we engage in an activity to sustain ourselves and our families. It is impossible to walk a path of integrity if this vast expanse of our life is kept separate from our spiritual practice. Therefore, the third and final pillar of ethical conduct is samyak ajiva, or right livelihood. This is the crucial practice of earning a living in a way that is honorable, peaceful, and consistent with the core intention to reduce suffering in the world. It is the integration of our ethics into our economics, ensuring that the way we acquire our daily bread does not contradict the wholesome aspirations of our heart. The fundamental principle of right livelihood, like that of right speech and right action, is harmlessness. At its most basic level, this means avoiding professions that, by their very nature, cause direct and significant harm to other beings. The classical texts identify 5 specific trades to be avoided: dealing in weapons, which facilitate violence; dealing in living beings, which include slavery, prostitution, and the raising of animals for slaughter; working in meat production; and dealing in intoxicants or poisons, which cloud the mind and cause heedlessness. The underlying wisdom here is clear. Engaging in work that directly profits from the suffering, delusion, or death of others will inevitably corrupt our own minds and create immense negative karma. In our modern, complex world, we can expand this principle to include any work that is fundamentally based on exploitation, deceit, or destruction. This might include working in predatory lending that traps people in debt, engaging in marketing that relies on false claims, working for an industry that knowingly pollutes the environment, or creating media that profits from spreading hatred and division. The guiding question we must ask ourselves is this: does my work require me, either directly or indirectly, to violate the principles of right speech and right action? Is my income dependent on causing harm? This question, however, can be a source of great anxiety. In today's globalized economy, very few professions are perfectly pure, and many of us do not have the luxury of easily changing our careers. This is where the wisdom of the middle way is essential. Right livelihood is not about demanding that everyone quit their corporate job to become an organic farmer or a social worker. The path is far more subtle and practical than that. The real heart of the practice lies not in the title of your job, but in the quality of mind you bring to it. There is a story of a Zen master who, when asked about the nature of practice, spoke of a janitor who worked in his monastery. This man, in the eyes of the world, had a lowly and undesirable job, but every day he would sweep the floors with perfect, unbroken mindfulness. With each stroke of his broom, he was not just sweeping dust, he was sweeping the dust of delusion from his own mind. He did his work with a sense of dignity, seeing it as an act of service that created a clean and peaceful environment for others to practice in. His simple, humble work was his profound spiritual path. Now, contrast this with a CEO of a celebrated non-profit organization who is driven by ego, who treats their employees with contempt, and whose mind is a constant storm of ambition and anxiety. In the eyes of the world, the CEO has the ultimate right livelihood, but in the eyes of wisdom, the mindful janitor's practice is far more pure and beneficial. This teaches us that any form of work, as long as it is not fundamentally harmful, can become a field for profound practice. If you work in an office, a meeting can become an opportunity to practice deep listening, putting aside your own agenda to truly hear your colleagues. Writing an email can be a practice of right speech, taking the time to ensure your words are clear, truthful, and kind. A tight deadline can become a laboratory for observing how your mind reacts under pressure. A difficult client or co-worker can be your greatest teacher, offering you a chance to practice patience, compassion, and non-reactivity. The monotony of a repetitive task can become a powerful anchor for mindfulness, a chance to train the mind to stay present rather than escaping into daydreams. The focus shifts from "what do I do" to "how do I do it?" We learn to bring our practice to work with us, infusing our daily tasks with the qualities of mindfulness, integrity, and goodwill. Still, we must be honest about the challenges. We may work for a large company whose overall impact on the world is ambiguous, or even negative in some respects. This is where we must skillfully navigate the gray areas. The practice here is not about wallowing in guilt or demanding an unattainable perfection. It is about focusing on our own sphere of influence. Can you be a source of integrity within your team? Can you treat your customers and colleagues with unwavering respect and honesty? Can you advocate for more ethical or sustainable practices from within the system? Can you use the resources your job provides to support your family and to be generous to others? It is about doing the most good and the least harm right where we are. And when opportunities for change arise, a new job offer, a chance to move to a more ethical department, we can make our choices guided by the principles of the path. It is a commitment to a direction of travel, not an insistence on having already arrived at a perfect destination. Ultimately, right livelihood invites us to reframe the entire purpose of work. In a purely materialist culture, work is often seen as a burden, a necessary evil one must endure to earn a paycheck that allows for a few fleeting hours of pleasure and consumption. The wisdom of the path offers a far more inspiring and dignified view. It invites us to see our work as our unique form of service, our contribution to the intricate tapestry of human society. Through the lens of our interconnectedness, we see that the person who programs a piece of software, the one who paves the road, the one who cares for the sick, and the one who prepares our food are all supporting each other in a vast web of mutual dependence. When we infuse our work with this intention of service, even the most mundane job becomes imbued with meaning. We are no longer just working for a paycheck. We are participating in the support and maintenance of our shared world. With the cultivation of right livelihood, we complete the foundational training in Shila, or ethical conduct. We have brought the principles of the path into what we say, what we do, and how we sustain ourselves. This creates a life of outer harmony, integrity, and self-respect. This stable and peaceful external foundation is an indispensable support for the next stage of the journey. When we are no longer constantly creating conflict and agitation in our outer lives, we create the possibility for a profound and lasting inner stillness. Having put our external house in order, we are now fully prepared to turn our attention to the direct training of the mind itself. We are ready to move into the heart of the path's transformative power, the cultivation of mental discipline, beginning with the engine that drives all progress, the practice of right effort. Having established a life of outer harmony through the practice of ethical conduct, we now turn the full force of our attention inward. We enter the second great division of the path, the training in samadhi, or mental discipline. This is the direct, hands-on work of transforming the mind from a state of chaotic distraction to one of serene stability and power. The engine that drives this entire inner transformation, the very heart of our momentum on the path, is the practice of samyak vyayama, or right effort. When we hear the word effort, Our modern minds often conjure images of stressful, white-knuckled striving. We think of pushing, forcing, and the tense ambition associated with worldly success. Right effort is something entirely different. It is not a grim struggle against ourselves, but a wise, joyful, and persistent application of energy. It is the balanced and skillful energy of the lute string tuned just right. Not so tight that it snaps from strain, and not so loose that it is limp and ineffective. It is the gentle but unwavering current that carries our practice forward, the conscious and compassionate engagement with our own inner world. The practice of right effort can be beautifully understood as the art of becoming a skillful gardener of the mind. Our mind is a garden, and in any given moment, it can be fertile ground for both wholesome flowers and unwholesome weeds. Right effort is the four-part strategy we use to cultivate a beautiful and flourishing inner landscape. The first of these four great efforts is the wisdom of preventing unwholesome states from arising. A wise gardener does not simply wait for weeds to overrun their garden and then spend all their time pulling them. They proactively create conditions that make it difficult for weeds to sprout in the first place. In our mental garden, this is the practice of guarding the sense doors. It means applying a gentle mindfulness to what we allow into our minds through our eyes, ears, and thoughts. If we know from experience that endlessly scrolling through angry social media feeds reliably plants seeds of anger and comparison in our minds, right effort is the wisdom to consciously limit that input. If we know that certain types of violent entertainment leave us feeling agitated, right effort is the choice to consume media that nourishes our peace instead. This is not about hiding from the world in a sterile bubble, but about exercising a compassionate wisdom about what we feed our minds. It is the proactive and intelligent skill of not planting poison seeds in our own garden. Despite our best efforts at prevention, weeds will inevitably sprout. The second great effort is the skill of abandoning unwholesome states that have already arisen. When we are practicing mindfulness, we will inevitably notice that a weed has appeared. A thought of greed, a wave of jealousy, a surge of anger, a cloud of self-pity. The unskilled reaction is twofold. We might indulge the weed, watering it with our attention, replaying the story that feeds it until it grows into a thick, thorny bush. Or we might react with aversion and self-hatred, trying to violently rip the weed out, which only disturbs the soil and makes it more likely for other weeds to grow. Right effort offers a middle way. It is the skill of mindfully acknowledging the weed without judgment. Ah, I see you, anger. We recognize it clearly. We understand that it is a toxic plant that will bring suffering if allowed to grow. And then, with a gentle and firm intention, we let it go. We relax our grip on the story that feeds it. We withdraw our attention from it and place our attention on something more wholesome, like the physical sensation of our breath. We starve the weed of the sunlight of our attention, and it naturally withers and dies on its own. A beautiful garden, however, is not defined merely by the absence of weeds. It is defined by the presence of beautiful flowers. The third great effort is the joyful task of arousing wholesome states that have not yet arisen. This is the creative and proactive side of the practice. We don't have to wait passively for happiness to strike us like lightning. We can actively plant the seeds of wholesome states in our own minds. If we are feeling bored, listless, or neutral, we can intentionally bring to mind 3 things we are genuinely grateful for. We can take a moment to actively send thoughts of loving kindness to a friend, a family member, or even a stranger. We can choose to get up and perform a small act of generosity. We can deliberately recall a time we acted with integrity and feel the quiet joy of that memory. This is the conscious cultivation of the good. It is the understanding that our inner states are not random, they are conditioned, and we can actively participate in creating the conditions for our own well-being. Once a beautiful flower has begun to bloom, it needs care. The fourth and final great effort is the skill of maintaining and perfecting wholesome states that have already arisen. In our distraction-addicted minds, we often have a tendency to overlook or quickly abandon positive states. A moment of genuine peace arises during a walk, but we immediately start planning our afternoon and the moment is lost. A feeling of deep love for a partner swells in our heart, but we shy away from it and check our phone. Right effort is the practice of learning to recognize these precious, wholesome states and to savor them. When a feeling of calm, joy, connection, or compassion arises, the practice is to stay with it. In a non-clinging way, we can breathe with it, feel it fully in our body, and appreciate it. This is like giving a beautiful flower water, sunlight, and nourishment. By giving our mindful attention to these wholesome states, we strengthen their neural pathways in our brain. They become more familiar, more stable, and more easily accessible to us. Over time, the entire baseline state of our mind begins to shift from a place of anxiety to a place of quiet, resilient joy. There is a powerful Native American parable that perfectly encapsulates this entire fourfold practice. An old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. He says, "A great fight is going on inside me. It is a terrible fight between two wolves. One wolf is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, lies, false pride, and ego. The other wolf is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, empathy, generosity, truth, and compassion." The grandson thinks about it for a minute and then asks his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old Cherokee simply replies, "The one you feed." This is the essence of right effort. It is the conscious and continuous choice of which wolf to feed, moment by moment. It is the understanding that our inner life is not a fixed entity, but a dynamic process that is shaped by what we choose to cultivate. This process of mental gardening is not a grim and joyless chore. When undertaken with skill and a compassionate heart, right effort is a source of profound satisfaction. There is a clean, wholesome joy in seeing a negative habit pattern begin to lose its grip. There is a deep sense of dignity in cultivating a heart that is more generous and loving. The effort here is not a battle against a hostile enemy. It is the loving, intelligent care a person gives to their own precious home, their own mind. Right effort, then, provides the energy and the wise direction for our inner journey. It is the art of consciously shaping our minds for our own and others' benefit. But to be an effective gardener, one needs a crucial tool. A gardener must be able to see clearly. They must be able to distinguish a weed from a seedling, to notice when a plant needs water, and to see the first signs of disease. To do this work inside our own minds, we need a bright, steady, and illuminating light. We need a tool that allows us to see what is actually happening in our inner world from moment to moment, without distortion. This essential tool, this heart of all mental training, is the practice of right mindfulness. We arrive now at the very heart of the path, the central faculty that makes the entire journey of transformation possible. We have established an ethical foundation for our lives and have committed to the practice of right effort, the wise and gentle gardening of the mind. But a gardener cannot work in darkness. To know which weeds to pull and which flowers to nurture, we need light. The light, the lamp, the essential tool that illuminates our inner world with pristine clarity, is the practice of samyak smriti, or right mindfulness. Mindfulness is the capacity to pay attention, on purpose, in the present moment, without judgment. It is the simple yet profound art of knowing what is happening while it is happening. Most of us spend the majority of our lives in a state of virtual reality, lost in a fog of thoughts about the past or anxieties about the future. We eat without tasting, walk without feeling our feet on the ground, and listen to others while formulating our own reply. We live on autopilot. Right mindfulness is the gentle but radical act of switching the autopilot off. It is the choice to be fully present for our own lives. The most fundamental and accessible way to train this faculty of mindfulness is through the practice of mindfulness of breathing. The breath is the perfect anchor to the present moment. It is always with us, from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death. It is always happening now. It is a neutral, non-dramatic event, and it is a perfect mirror of our mental state. When the mind is agitated, the breath is shallow and rapid, and when the mind is calm, the breath is deep and slow. The practice itself is beautifully simple. You begin by finding a comfortable and dignified posture, either sitting on a cushion or a chair, with your back straight but not stiff. You can gently close your eyes or leave them softly open with a downward gaze. Then, you simply bring your attention to the physical sensation of the breath as it enters and leaves your body. You might feel it as a coolness at the tip of the nostrils, or as the gentle rise and fall of your abdomen. You don't need to change your breath, control it, or judge it. Your only task is to feel it as it is. Inevitably, within a few seconds, your mind will wander. It will be carried away by a thought, a memory, a plan, or a sound. This is not a mistake. This is not a sign that you are failing at meditation. This is simply what minds do. The moment you realize your mind has wandered is a moment of perfect mindfulness. In that moment, the real practice begins. Without any anger or self-criticism, you gently acknowledge where the mind went. Thinking. And then, like gently guiding a lost puppy back home, you return your attention to the sensation of the breath. You will have to do this 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. This act of noticing the wandering and gently returning is the core of the practice. Each return is like a push-up for the brain, strengthening the muscle of attention. The goal is not to achieve a perfectly silent mind, free of all thoughts. The goal is to change your relationship with your thoughts. You learn to see them not as absolute reality, but as transient mental events, like clouds passing through the vast sky of your awareness. The breath becomes your refuge, your anchor in the storm of mental activity. From this stable foundation of breath awareness, we can begin to expand the scope of our mindfulness to include all aspects of our experience. The Buddha laid out a systematic training for this, known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The first is mindfulness of the body. This is our primary ground. We learn to be aware of the body's posture, knowing when we are sitting, standing, walking, or lying down. We pay attention to the subtle tapestry of physical sensations that are always present. The feeling of our feet on the floor, the contact of our clothes on our skin, the sensations of warmth, coolness, tingling, pressure, or tightness. This practice pulls us out of the realm of abstract thought and anchors us firmly in the physical reality of the here and now. It helps us to inhabit our bodies fully, rather than just using them as a vehicle to carry our head around. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings. In this context, feelings refers to the raw, immediate tone of any experience, which can be categorized into one of 3 types: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This is a crucial practice for understanding and liberating ourselves from reactivity. When you take a sip of tea, there is a pleasant feeling. When you stub your toe, there is an unpleasant feeling. When you are just sitting, there may be a neutral feeling. The practice is to notice these raw feeling tones with bare attention before the mind launches into the story, the judgment, and the reaction. We simply note pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. By doing this, we create a precious gap between the stimulus and our response. We see the first arrow of the raw feeling with clarity, which gives us the power to choose not to fire the second arrow of craving for the pleasant or aversion to the unpleasant. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind state. Here, we become like a meteorologist of our own inner world. We learn to recognize the overall climate of the mind at any given moment. We ask ourselves, what is the state of my mind right now? And we answer with simple honesty. Is the mind contracted with anger? Is it agitated with restlessness? Is it lethargic and dull? Is it full of desire? Or is it calm, focused, and joyful? By learning to name and recognize these mind states without identifying with them, we strip them of their power. We see that anger is just a temporary weather pattern passing through the vast sky of our awareness. It is not the sky itself. We are not our anger. We are not our anxiety. We are the awareness that knows these states are present. The fourth and most comprehensive foundation is mindfulness of mental objects, or dhammas. This is where mindfulness practice blossoms into deep wisdom. It is the practice of looking at our experience through the clarifying lens of the teachings themselves. We begin to see for ourselves the truths we have been exploring. We watch a thought arise in the mind. We see it persist for a moment, and we see it pass away. And in that moment, we have a direct, experiential insight into anicca, impermanence. We feel a strong emotion, and we observe how it is composed of bodily sensations, feeling tones, and thoughts, and we see directly that there is no solid self to be found, only these interacting processes, the truth of anatta. We experience a craving, and recognize it with clarity. This is tanha. This is where the path becomes truly alive. It ceases to be a philosophy we are studying, and becomes a description of our own living reality. Mindfulness is not a practice confined to a meditation cushion. The ultimate aim is to bring this quality of present moment, non-judgmental awareness, into every corner of our lives. You can practice mindful eating by slowing down and actually tasting each bite of your food. You can practice mindful walking by feeling the sensations of your feet lifting and falling. You can turn a mundane chore like washing the dishes into a rich meditation, feeling the warmth of the water and the texture of the soap. You can practice mindful conversation by offering the other person the gift of your full, undivided attention. Any activity, when done with mindfulness, becomes an opportunity to wake up. Imagine an artist walking a tightrope high above the ground. To maintain their balance and safely cross to the other side, their focus must be absolute. They cannot afford to be lost in regret about a past misstep, nor can they be consumed by anxiety about reaching the end. Their entire being must be concentrated in the present moment. The feeling of the rope beneath their feet, the subtle tension in their muscles, the gentle adjustments needed to maintain equilibrium. Our life is this tightrope. The past is gone, the future is not yet here. The only place we can ever find our balance is in the here and now. Mindfulness is the skill that allows us to walk this path with grace, stability, and courage. Right mindfulness, therefore, is the engine of insight and the foundation of peace. It is the faculty that allows us to see our own minds clearly, enabling us to practice right effort skillfully. It is the direct instrument we use to see reality as it is, and this seeing is what liberates us. As we continue to practice, our ability to remain present and keep our attention steady grows stronger and more resilient. This growing stability of mind is the gateway to an even deeper state of mental calm and unification. The clarity of mindfulness prepares the ground for the power of concentration. This leads us directly to the final stage of mental discipline, the profound practice of right concentration. We have arrived at the peak of our training in mental discipline. Through the wise application of right effort, we have learned to cultivate the garden of the mind. Through the steady lamp of right mindfulness, we have learned to see this inner landscape with clear, non-judgmental awareness. We have practiced returning, again and again, to the anchor of the present moment. The beautiful and natural result of this patient, repeated effort is the arising of samyak samadhi, or right concentration. If mindfulness is the gentle act of repeatedly gathering the scattered rays of our attention, concentration is the moment those rays converge into a single, steady, and powerful beam of light. It is the mind's ability not just to be brought back to an object of attention, but to arrive there, to settle, and to remain unified and unwavering in a state of profound and peaceful stillness. It is the culmination of our mental training, where the mind, once a turbulent ocean, becomes as calm and clear as a mountain lake on a windless day. It is essential to understand the intimate partnership between mindfulness and concentration. They are not two separate skills, but two wings of the same bird, working together to create flight. Mindfulness is the active, investigative quality of awareness. It is the shepherd that notices when a sheep has strayed from the flock and gently guides it back. Concentration is the quality of stability that develops as a result of the shepherd's diligence. It is the well-trained flock that learns to stay together peacefully and contentedly. In our meditation practice, as we rest our attention on the breath, mindfulness is the faculty that notices, the mind has wandered into planning the future. Mindfulness then partners with right effort to gently let go of the plan and guide the attention back to the breath. When we have done this hundreds, even thousands of times, the mind gradually learns. The periods of wandering become shorter, and the periods of staying with the breath become longer. The mind becomes less like a restless puppy, and more like a loyal and steady companion. Concentration is this quality of collectedness, of being one-pointed. Mindfulness ensures that this concentration is not a dull, trance-like state, but one that is infused with clarity and presence. They arise together and support one another in a beautiful feedback loop. The power of a concentrated mind is best understood through the classic simile of the lake. Our ordinary, untrained mind is like a lake being whipped into a frenzy by the constant winds of our desires and aversions. The surface is choppy and agitated. The water is stirred up, full of mud and sediment. In this state, if you look at the surface of the lake, you cannot see your own reflection clearly. Your image is fragmented and distorted. Furthermore, you cannot see what lies at the bottom of the lake. The treasures and the dangers are completely obscured by the murky water. This is our normal state of anxiety and distraction, where we lack both clear self-knowledge and deep insight into the nature of reality. The practice of calming the mind through mindfulness is like the wind beginning to die down. As we practice right concentration, the wind ceases completely. The lake becomes perfectly still and calm. The mud and sediment slowly settle to the bottom. Now, the surface becomes like a flawless mirror. When you look at it, you see your own reflection with perfect, undistorted clarity. This is the arising of true self-knowledge. The water itself becomes completely transparent. Now, you can see everything that lies beneath the surface, the hidden rocks, the sunken logs, the shimmering jewels. This is the arising of wisdom, or prajna. A concentrated mind is a mind fit for the work of liberation. It has the power and the clarity to see through the illusions that bind us. A common misunderstanding that causes great frustration for beginners is the belief that the goal of meditation is to stop thinking. They sit down, try to concentrate, and are horrified to discover a relentless torrent of inner chatter. Believing they are failing, they may give up. Right concentration is not about waging a war against thoughts. It is not about forcing the mind into a state of blankness. Rather, it is the art of becoming so deeply and peacefully absorbed in the object of meditation, such as the breath, that the distracting inner chatter naturally subsides into the background. It's like being completely captivated by a beautiful piece of classical music. The other sounds in the room, a ticking clock, a distant siren may still be present, but they no longer capture your attention. You are not actively fighting against the ticking of the clock. You are simply so engrossed in the beauty of the music that the clock ceases to matter. Similarly, in a state of deep concentration, thoughts may still flicker at the periphery of awareness, but they lose their seductive power. They no longer have the energy to pull you away from the profound peace of the present moment. This state is not dull, empty, or boring. In fact, it is the very opposite. As the mind settles and the 5 great hindrances to peace, a sensory desire, ill will, restlessness and worry, sloth and torpor, and skeptical doubter, temporarily stilled, a profound sense of well-being naturally arises. The mind, freed from its usual burdens, experiences a deep and restorative pleasure. This is a happiness born not of external stimulation, but of inner stillness. The texts call these states piti, which is a rapturous and joyful energy, and sukha, which is a deep and abiding happiness or bliss. These experiences are a taste of freedom. They are a powerful source of encouragement on the path, revealing that there is a form of happiness available to us that is far more satisfying and reliable than anything the world of the senses can offer. These progressively deeper states of absorption and bliss are known as the jhanas. They are not mystical or magical states, but the natural potential of every human mind when it is skillfully trained and purified of its usual agitations. Right concentration is the beautiful fruit of our inner cultivation. It completes the training in mental discipline. Right effort provides the wise and balanced energy. Right mindfulness provides the clear, moment-to-moment seeing. And right concentration provides the unwavering stability and unifying power. The mind becomes a perfected instrument, sharp, steady, clear, and resilient. It is no longer a scattered and fragmented thing, but a unified and potent tool for insight. With a mind so prepared, so cleansed of its grosser agitations, and strengthened by stillness, what is it now capable of? It has become the perfect vessel for cultivating and expressing the most beautiful and boundless qualities of the human heart. Having forged this instrument of profound mental clarity, we are now ready to turn our attention to its highest and most noble use, the systematic cultivation of a heart that radiates unconditional love and compassion for all beings. Our journey now takes a turn from the training of the mind to the opening of the heart, beginning with the luminous practice of loving kindness. Having diligently worked to forge a mind that is stable, clear, and powerful, we now arrive at a beautiful turning point in our journey. A sharpened tool is not an end in itself. Its value is found in what it creates. And so, we now turn this purified instrument of mind toward its highest and most noble purpose, the systematic cultivation of a boundless and benevolent heart. We move from the training of the mind to the opening of the heart, beginning with the luminous and healing practice of metta, or loving kindness. Metta is not the sentimental, conditional, an often possessive emotion that we typically call love in our songs and stories. It is something far more vast, stable, and unconditional. Metta is a sincere, radiant, and boundless wish for the true and lasting happiness of all living beings. Without exception, without discrimination, and without expecting anything in return. It is the friendliness of the sun, which shines its warmth on the saint and the sinner, the flower and the weed, impartially and ceaselessly. It is the heart's direct and powerful antidote to the poison of aversion. The practice of metta is a direct counterforce to the energies of anger, resentment, jealousy, fear, and self-criticism. It is impossible to hold hatred in your heart for someone while you are genuinely wishing for their happiness. The two states are mutually exclusive. It is like trying to shine a bright light and maintain a dark shadow in the same spot. The light of metta simply dissolves the shadow of ill will. When we feel the cold, contracting grip of fear or anxiety, metta is the warmth that thaws it. When we are attacked by the harsh voice of our own inner critic, metta is the practice of learning to become our own best friend, offering ourselves the same unconditional kindness we would offer to someone we truly love. It is a profound act of healing, a way of reparenting ourselves with a gentle and forgiving heart. By cultivating this friendly disposition as our baseline state, we create a powerful inner refuge, a portable home of peace and goodwill that we can carry with us into any situation. The cultivation of metta is not left to chance. It follows a systematic and wise progression, a gradual unfolding of the heart's capacity for love. The practice traditionally begins in the place that, for many of us, is the most challenging, with ourselves. We are often our own harshest judges, and we cannot offer to others a kindness that we cannot first offer to ourselves. So, we sit in a comfortable posture, and we begin by gently directing the wish for happiness inward. We may silently repeat traditional phrases, letting the intention behind them saturate our heart. Phrases such as, "May I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may I live with ease." At first, this may feel awkward or even undeserved, but we persist gently, understanding that this is the essential foundation. We are filling our own cup, so that it may eventually overflow to others. Once a baseline of warmth and friendliness toward ourselves has been established, we expand the circle of metta to include a respected benefactor or a dear friend. We bring to mind a person for whom we feel easy and uncomplicated love and gratitude, a teacher, a close friend, a beloved family member. We hold their image in our mind, and we extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. At this stage, the feeling of metta often flows freely, strengthening and amplifying the warmth in our own heart. Next, the practice challenges us to stretch the boundaries of our care. We bring to mind a neutral person, someone we see regularly, but for whom we feel neither strong liking nor disliking. It could be the cashier at the grocery store, the person who delivers our mail, or a neighbor we see in passing. We often walk through our days surrounded by such people, seeing them as mere background characters in our own story. This practice invites us to see their full humanity. We hold them in our mind and extend the same heartfelt wishes. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. In doing so, we break down the artificial walls of indifference that separate us from others, recognizing our shared wish for happiness. Then comes the most transformative and often most difficult stage. The practice invites us to gently bring to mind a difficult person, someone who has hurt us, or with whom we have conflict. This requires great skill and care. The intention here is not to condone their harmful actions, nor is it to force ourselves into a superficial state of forgiveness. The intention is purely for our own liberation. We recognize that holding on to hatred is like carrying a hot coal, burning only ourselves. And so, for the sake of our own peace, we attempt to extend a basic wish for their well-being. We recognize that their harmful actions likely come from their own deep suffering and confusion. We can silently wish, may you be free from the anger and pain that causes you to harm others. May you too find a path to peace. This profound act of generosity is what frees our own heart from the prison of resentment. Finally, having worked through these specific individuals, we allow our metta to become boundless. We let the feeling of loving kindness that we have cultivated radiate outwards in all directions. We send it to the front, to the back, to the right, to the left, above, and below. We extend it to all beings in our city, our country, and the entire world. We include all humans, all animals, all creatures seen and unseen, in all realms of existence. We wish for all beings everywhere, without exception, to be happy and well. The heart, no longer confined by the narrow categories of me, friend, and enemy, becomes as vast as space itself, a radiant sun of unconditional goodwill. It is important to distinguish metta from its near enemy, which is attachment or conditional love. Attachment says, "I love you because you make me feel good," or "I will be happy if you love me back." It is a transactional emotion, tinged with neediness and the fear of loss. Metta is completely different. It is a selfless, radiant state. It says, "I wish for you to be happy, period. Regardless of your relationship to me, regardless of whether I even know you." It is a generous and free offering of the heart. The power of metta is not merely a gentle, sentimental feeling. It is a formidable force for peace. This is powerfully illustrated in the story of the Buddha and the raging elephant, Nalagiri. The Buddha's jealous cousin, in an attempt to assassinate him, arranged for the fiercest elephant in the kingdom to be intoxicated and set loose on the narrow street where the Buddha was walking. As the enraged elephant charged, trumpeting furiously, people screamed and fled in terror. The Buddha's attendant, Ananda, tried to step in front of him to protect him, but the Buddha calmly told him to stand aside. He stood his ground, perfectly still, and directed a powerful, unwavering beam of pure loving kindness toward the charging beast. The elephant, which was expecting to meet aggression with aggression, was suddenly enveloped in an immense field of unconditional love and goodwill, a feeling it had never experienced before. Its rage simply dissolved. It slowed to a stop. Its eyes softened, and it walked forward peacefully and knelt at the Buddha's feet. This story shows that metta has the power to pacify the most violent anger, both in others and, more importantly, within ourselves. The practice of metta, of loving kindness, is a profound way to heal our own hearts and change our relationship with the world. It is the active cultivation of our noblest potential. It is the sincere and powerful wish for all beings to find happiness and the causes of happiness. This naturally raises a complementary question. If metta is the heart's response to the potential for happiness, what is the heart's response when it is confronted with the direct and undeniable reality of suffering? What is the feeling that arises when our loving kindness encounters another being's pain? This brings us to the inseparable sister of metta, the tender quivering of the heart known as compassion. As the radiant sun of loving kindness, or metta, shines from our hearts, it wishes for all beings to be happy and to flourish. It is a boundless warmth that seeks the well-being of all. But what happens when this warm light falls upon a being who is not flourishing, a being who is caught in the throes of pain, loss, or despair? The heart's response undergoes a profound and subtle transformation. The gentle warmth of metta is infused with a tender, quivering sensitivity. This is the birth of karuna, or compassion. If metta is the wish, "May you be happy," karuna is its inseparable twin, the heartfelt wish, "May you be free from suffering." It is the trembling of a brave heart in the face of pain. It is the capacity to be present with the suffering of ourselves and others without being overwhelmed, and from that presence, to feel a sincere aspiration for its relief. It is the direct antidote to the poisons of cruelty, indifference, and cold-heartedness. It is crucial to understand what true compassion is and what it is not. In our common language, we often confuse compassion with pity. Pity is not a skillful state of mind. Pity looks down from above. It creates a sense of distance and superiority. When we pity someone, we say, "Oh, you poor unfortunate thing, I am so glad I am not in your position." Pity reinforces the separation between me, the fortunate one, and you, the unfortunate one. True compassion, karuna, does the very opposite. It closes the distance. It stands on level ground, heart to heart, and recognizes a shared, universal vulnerability. It says, "I see your pain. I know this feeling of suffering, for I too am a human being who has felt pain. Your suffering is my suffering." It is born from the wise understanding of our interconnectedness. It is empathy infused with wisdom. Another common fear that prevents people from opening their hearts is the fear of being drowned by the world's suffering. In an age where we are constantly bombarded by tragic news from every corner of the globe, it is easy to feel that if we open the floodgates of compassion, we will be swept away in a tidal wave of despair. This is a misunderstanding of the nature of true karuna. Helpless despair is not compassion. Emotional burnout is not compassion. The state of compassion described in the Buddhist teachings is not weak or fragile. It is imbued with a quiet and resilient strength. It is the brave tenderness of a skilled physician at the scene of an accident. The physician's heart is open to the reality of the patient's pain, yet their mind remains clear, steady, and focused on providing skillful help. True compassion does not get lost in the drama of the suffering. It responds to the suffering with a courageous and helpful presence. It is the strength to keep your heart open in the presence of pain, both yours and others. Like metta, karuna is a quality that can be intentionally cultivated through meditation. The practice often begins by bringing to mind a being whose suffering is clear and undeniable. Perhaps a person we know who is ill, or an animal we have seen that is hurt. We allow ourselves to gently connect with the reality of their pain, not to an overwhelming degree, but just enough to touch the heart's natural tenderness. From this feeling, we begin to radiate the sincere wish for their suffering to end. We can use phrases such as, "May you be free from your pain, may you be free from your sorrow, may you be healed, may you find peace." Having established this compassionate field, we can then expand the circle. We turn the compassion toward ourselves, acknowledging our own struggles and pains with a gentle, forgiving heart. We extend it to a loved one who is suffering. We extend it to a neutral person. And then, most powerfully, we extend it to a difficult person. We begin to see that the very actions of this difficult person are driven by their own deep suffering and confusion. And from this insight, a genuine wish for them to be free from that root suffering can arise. Finally, we radiate this wish for freedom from pain to all beings everywhere, recognizing that all unenlightened beings are subject to dukkha, and we cultivate a boundless aspiration for the liberation of all. In our modern world, the problem of compassion fatigue is very real. But this fatigue is often not a result of too much true compassion, but of too much unprocessed empathic distress. It is the burnout that comes from taking on the pain of the world without the necessary inner resources of wisdom and balance. The wisdom of the path teaches that compassion must be balanced by equanimity. True compassion understands that we cannot fix every problem. It recognizes the vast and complex web of karma, and it accepts the limits of our own ability to intervene. A compassionate heart does not mean carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. It means doing what we can, where we are, with a heart full of love, and then letting go of the outcome. This balanced state of a wise heart is what prevents burnout and allows our compassion to be a sustainable, lifelong resource. The active, engaged nature of compassion is beautifully symbolized in the figure of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, a being who represents the awakened compassion of all the Buddhas. According to the legend, Avalokiteshvara made a vow not to rest until all beings were freed from suffering. As he looked out upon the universe, he was so overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the world's pain that his head shattered into 11 pieces and his arms broke into 1,000. The Buddhas, seeing his great compassionate intent, reassembled him, giving him 11 heads to better hear all the cries of suffering and 1,000 arms to better reach out and offer aid. This powerful image is not to be taken literally. It is a profound metaphor. The 1,000 arms of compassion represent the countless skillful ways that an awakened heart can respond to suffering. Compassion is not a passive feeling of sadness. It is love in action. It is the hand that offers a cup of tea, the ear that listens without judgment, the voice that speaks up against injustice, the arms that offer a comforting embrace. It is a dynamic readiness to serve. Karuna, compassion, is the heart's brave and tender response to the reality of suffering in the world. It is the force that motivates us to act for the benefit of others, to alleviate pain wherever we find it. When paired with its sister, metta, which wishes for the happiness of all, it creates a complete and powerful love, a heart that is fully engaged with the totality of life, both its joys and its sorrows. We have now cultivated the wish for all beings to be happy, and the wish for them to be free from pain. But two crucial pieces of a fully balanced heart remain. What is our response when we witness the happiness and success of others, especially when we ourselves may be struggling? And how do we maintain our inner equilibrium in a world that is constantly presenting us with an unpredictable mix of pleasure and pain, praise and blame, gain and loss? To answer these questions, we must now turn to the two final, sublime states of the heart, the practices of sympathetic joy and profound equanimity. Having opened our hearts with the wish for all beings to be happy through loving kindness and to be free from suffering through compassion, we now arrive at the final two dimensions of a truly liberated heart. These qualities provide the sublime balance and boundless perspective that allow our love and compassion to be both wise and sustainable. Our journey into the heart's vast potential now leads us to ask a subtle but crucial question. How do we respond not to the suffering of others, but to their happiness? What arises in our hearts when we witness the success, the good fortune, and the joy of another person, especially when we ourselves may be facing difficulties? The answer that the path cultivates is the radiant and unselfish joy of mudita, often translated as sympathetic or appreciative joy. Mudita is the direct and powerful antidote to the poisons of jealousy and envy. Jealousy and envy are deeply painful and isolating states of mind. They arise from the mistaken belief that life is a zero-sum game, that happiness is a limited resource, and that another person's success somehow diminishes our own. This scarcity mindset, rooted in the ego's constant comparison and sense of lack, is a source of immense suffering. It creates a world where we can only be happy when we are winning, and where the good news of others becomes a source of pain for us. The practice of mudita is a radical rebellion against this painful worldview. It is the cultivation of a heart that operates from a principle of abundance. It recognizes that joy is not a finite commodity to be hoarded. By learning to genuinely rejoice in the happiness of others, we infinitely expand our own opportunities for joy. Suddenly, every success story we hear, every happy couple we see, every joyful laugh we overhear becomes a source of happiness for us too. The practice of mudita is a conscious choice. When we hear of a friend's promotion, a colleague's achievement, or even a stranger's good fortune, the mind's old habit might be to immediately compare, why them and not me? The practice of mudita is to catch that habitual thought and to intentionally pivot the heart. We can consciously say to ourselves, how wonderful for them. May their happiness and success continue. I am happy that they are happy. This is not about pretending or forcing a feeling. It is about gently inclining the mind, again and again, toward generosity of spirit. We are actively choosing connection over comparison, abundance over scarcity. This practice not only dissolves the painful poison of envy in our own hearts, but it also makes us a person whom others can trust with their good news, deepening our friendships and creating a virtuous cycle of shared joy. With metta, karuna, and mudita, we have cultivated a heart that can respond skillfully to the prospect of happiness, the reality of suffering, and the experience of joy in both ourselves and others. We now come to the final and perhaps most profound of these four boundless states. This is the quality that holds and balances all the others. It is the great stabilizer of the heart, the source of unshakable peace amidst the turbulent waves of life. This is upekkha, or equanimity. Equanimity is a state of profound mental balance, a spacious and non-reactive peace that is not disturbed by the constant rising and falling of life's fortunes. The Buddha spoke of the 8 worldly winds that are constantly blowing in our lives: pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute. Our unenlightened minds are like a leaf blown helplessly about by these winds, soaring in elation, one moment when we experience pleasure and praise, and plunging into despair, the next when we experience pain and blame. Equanimity is the cultivation of a mind that is like a great mountain. The mountain remains stable, majestic, and unmoved, whether it is bathed in glorious sunshine, lashed by fierce winds, drenched by rain, or covered in heavy snow. The weather of life constantly changes, but the mountain-like mind of equanimity remains grounded in a deep and unwavering peace. It is absolutely crucial to understand what equanimity is not. Its near enemy, the state that can be easily mistaken for it, is indifference. Indifference is a cold, numb, shut-down state. Indifference says, "I don't care, it doesn't matter." It is a form of aversion, a turning away from the richness and pain of life. True equanimity is the very opposite. It is not born of apathy, but of profound wisdom and deep caring. Equanimity says, "I care deeply about all of it, but my inner peace is not dependent on the outcome." It is a vast and warm-hearted spaciousness. This state is born from the deep, experiential understanding of the truths of anicca and karma. It sees the bigger picture. It understands that all situations are impermanent, that pleasure and pain will come and go. It understands that beings reap the results of their own actions. This wisdom allows the heart to remain open and engaged, without being knocked off balance by every event. Equanimity is the great, loving container that holds and protects the other three heart states, allowing them to become truly boundless and wise. Without the balance of equanimity, our loving kindness can easily curdle into attachment, grief, and despair when our loved ones experience hardship. Without equanimity, our compassion can become overwhelming, leading to emotional burnout as we drown in the suffering of the world. Without equanimity, our sympathetic joy can become a kind of agitated excitement, losing its peaceful quality. Equanimity is the deep, steady ballast that keeps the ship of the heart upright. No matter how joyful or turbulent the seas may be, it allows us to love freely, to feel compassion deeply, and to rejoice openly, all while remaining grounded in an unshakable peace. These four qualities, loving kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, sympathetic joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha, known in the tradition as the Brahma Viharas, which can be translated as the divine abodes or sublime states. They are considered the most beautiful and wholesome states of mind a human being can cultivate. Together, they form a complete and perfect response to all of life's circumstances. They provide the answer to every social interaction and every turn of fortune. For all beings, we cultivate the wish for them to be happy, metta. When they are suffering, our heart responds with the wish for their suffering to cease, karuna. When they are happy, our heart responds by rejoicing in their joy, mudita. And through it all, in the face of life's constant changes, we remain balanced, steady, and peaceful, grounded in wisdom, upekkha. To live in these four states is to abide in a divine home, a heart that has become a source of infinite blessing for the world. This completes our exploration of the cultivation of the heart. In fact, it completes our journey through the structure of the Noble Eightfold Path itself. We began with the training in wisdom, right view, and right intention, which gave us our map and set our inner compass. We moved to the training in ethical conduct, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, which aligned our outer life with our inner aspirations. And we have just completed the training in mental discipline, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, which has sharpened our minds and, through these four divine abodhis, opened our hearts. The map has been read, the path has been walked in theory, the inner faculties have been understood. The final and most essential stage of the journey now presents itself. It is the great task of integration. How do we take this entire, profound system of liberation off the meditation cushion, out of the realm of philosophy, and weave it seamlessly into the messy, beautiful, and unpredictable fabric of our ordinary, everyday lives? This brings us to our final chapter, the art of living an awakened life. We have now journeyed through the sublime architecture of the Noble Eightfold Path. We have been given the map of wisdom, we have learned the ethical guidelines for how to walk in the world, and we have explored the powerful techniques of mental discipline to train our minds and open our hearts. For many, a question naturally arises. This is all very beautiful, but my life is not a quiet monastery. It is a chaotic whirlwind of work, family, traffic, and stress. How can I possibly practice this in the midst of it all? This is the most important question of all, for the ultimate goal of the path is not to become a good meditator who can sit peacefully on a cushion. The goal is to live an awakened, compassionate, and wise life in the world as it is. The final stage of our journey is the great art of integration, of taking the practice off the cushion and weaving it into the very fabric of our daily existence. Think of your formal meditation practice, the time you set aside to sit quietly as an athlete's training session in the gym. In the gym, You lift weights, you build strength, you develop stamina and skill in a controlled environment. This training is essential, but the purpose of the training is not to become good at lifting weights in the gym. The purpose is to be able to move through your life with strength, grace, and resilience, to be able to lift your child without straining your back, to have the energy to play, to live a vital and healthy life. So it is with meditation. Our time on the cushion is where we build the mental and emotional muscles of mindfulness, concentration, and compassion. Our daily life is the game. It is the field where we get to use that strength. The two are inseparable. The more we train in the gym of formal practice, the more skillful we become in the game of life. And the more we pay attention during the game of life, the more we understand what we need to work on when we return to the gym. Your entire life becomes the meditation hall. The morning commute, once a source of frustration, becomes a practice of patience. The red traffic light is no longer an obstacle. It is a bell of mindfulness, a perfect, recurring reminder to take a conscious breath, to feel your hands on the steering wheel, and to relax your shoulders. The person who cuts you off is no longer an enemy, but an opportunity to practice letting go of anger, a chance to wish another being well on their journey. A stressful meeting at work becomes a laboratory for right speech and deep listening. Can you state your opinion clearly and kindly? Can you listen to a colleague's opposing view without immediately formulating a rebuttal in your head? Your household chores, once seen as drudgery, are transformed. Washing the dishes becomes a rich sensory meditation. The warmth of the water, the smooth surface of the plate, the scent of the soap. Each dish washed with full attention is a moment of peace. Each interaction with your family becomes a chance to choose a skillful response over a habitual reaction. When your child has a tantrum, can you meet their storm with the mountain-like stability of your own calm presence? When your partner says something that triggers you, can you pause, take a breath, and respond with the love and understanding you have been cultivating, rather than with a sharp word? Life itself provides an endless and perfectly tailored curriculum for our practice. Of course, life will present us with moments of intense difficulty, where strong emotions like anger, fear, shame, or grief threaten to overwhelm us. In these moments, we can use a powerful and compassionate mindfulness technique, sometimes known by the acronym RAIN. The R stands for recognize. The first step is to simply recognize and mentally name what is happening. This is anger, or fear is present. This simple act of naming creates a space between you and the emotion, preventing you from being completely consumed by it. The A stands for allow. This is the crucial step of letting the feeling be there. We stop fighting with it. We abandon the internal argument of, I shouldn't be feeling this. We give the emotion permission to exist, not because we like it, but because it is already here. This allowing is an act of profound inner kindness and surrender. The I stands for investigate. With a gentle, non-judgmental curiosity, we investigate the raw, physical sensations of the emotion in our body. Where do I feel this fear? Is it a tightness in the chest? A hollow feeling in the stomach? We explore it as pure sensation, without getting lost in the story behind it. This depersonalizes the emotion and reveals its impermanent, fluid nature. Finally, the N stands for nurture. Having recognized, allowed, and investigated the difficult emotion, we now offer ourselves a dose of active compassion. We might place a hand over our heart and offer ourselves the same kind words we would offer a dear friend. This is so hard right now. It is okay. May I be kind to myself in this moment. This systematic process of RAIN is a way to meet our most difficult moments, not with aversion, but with a transformative blend of mindfulness and compassion, to help us navigate the many daily irritations of life. There is a classic story about an old boatman. One misty morning, he was meditating in his small boat, when another boat came out of the fog and bumped into his. He was immediately filled with irritation, ready to shout at the careless person who had disturbed his peace. He stood up to yell, but as he looked, he saw that the other boat was empty. It had simply come loose from its moorings and drifted into him. In that instant, all of his anger vanished. He realized the boat was empty. The insight here is profound. Life is constantly sending empty boats to bump into us. A critical comment, a delayed flight, a spilled coffee. Our habit is to immediately populate that boat with a malicious pilot, to believe the event is a personal attack on me. This is what creates our anger. The practice of wisdom in daily life is to see these events for what they are: impersonal phenomena, conditioned events, empty boats drifting on the great river of cause and effect. When we can do this, when we can stop taking everything so personally, our reactivity dissolves, and we find a deep and abiding peace. Finally, it is important to remember that while this path is a personal one, we do not have to walk it alone. The Buddha emphasized the importance of Sangha, which means the community of fellow practitioners. This can be a formal meditation group you sit with, or simply a few trusted spiritual friends with whom you can share your journey honestly. The Sangha is a precious resource. It provides support when we feel discouraged, inspiration when we see the progress of others, and a valuable source of feedback and encouragement. To walk with others who share our deepest aspirations is a profound gift that helps to keep our practice vital and strong. By weaving these practices into the fabric of our days, we close the gap between our meditation on the cushion and our life in the world. Our entire existence becomes a seamless field of practice. Our formal sitting practice informs and strengthens our life, and the challenges of our life show us what we need to work on in our formal practice. We are no longer trying to find moments of peace in a chaotic life. We are learning to bring a peaceful heart and a clear mind to every moment, chaotic or calm. This integrated practice is the living embodiment of the path. This leads us to the final, ultimate question of our journey. What is the true nature of the freedom toward which this entire path is leading? What does it mean to find a lasting peace right here, in the midst of this very life? This brings us to the culmination of our exploration, the nature of liberation itself. We have traveled a great distance on this inner journey. We have diagnosed the pervasive storm of our disquiet, dukkha. We have courageously investigated its causes in the deep-seated poisons of craving, aversion, and ignorance. We have unfolded the ancient and noble map of the Eightfold Path, learning to cultivate wisdom, to live ethically, and to train the mind and heart with diligence and care. We have learned how to take this profound practice off the cushion and weave it into the very fabric of our lives. And so we arrive at the final question, the great destination toward which this entire path points. What is the ultimate fruit of this journey? What is the nature of the freedom we seek? The name for this ultimate freedom is nirvana, a word that, in the popular imagination, is shrouded in mystery, often mistaken for a kind of heavenly paradise. But its true meaning is something far more practical, profound, and immediately relevant to our lives. It is the supreme and unshakable peace that can be found not in another world, but right here, in the very heart of this one. The literal meaning of the word nirvana is to extinguish, or to blow out, as one would blow out the flame of a candle. This immediately begs the question, what is it that is extinguished? The path does not lead to the annihilation of the self, for we have come to see that a solid, separate self was an illusion to begin with. What is extinguished are the fires that have caused us so much pain, the fires that have fueled the storm within. These are the three fires of greed, or craving, hatred, or aversion, and delusion, or ignorance. Our ordinary, unenlightened life is a life lived in the heat of these fires. We are constantly burning with the fever of wanting something we don't have. We are burning with the friction of irritation and anger toward things we don't like. And we are burning with the confusing heat of our own deluded ideas about who we are and how the world works. This state of perpetual burning, of being restlessly propelled from one agitated state to another, is the experience of samsara, the endless cycle of suffering. Nirvana is the cooling of this fever. It is the quenching of these fires. It is the profound and lasting peace that arises when the fuel for our suffering has been exhausted. It is not a state of nothingness, but a state of supreme well-being, the cool and tranquil relief that comes when a long and painful fever finally breaks. This leads us to the most vital and liberating understanding of all. Nirvana is not a place you go to after you die. It is not a distant heaven reserved for the worthy. Samsara, the world of suffering, and nirvana, the state of freedom, are not two different geographical locations. They are two profoundly different ways of experiencing this very same reality, available to us in every moment. The unenlightened mind, driven by the three fires, experiences this world with all its joys, sorrows, successes, and failures as samsara. It is a realm of constant struggle, a relentless roller coaster of hope and fear, where our peace is always fragile and dependent on external conditions. The enlightened mind, a mind in which the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion have been extinguished, experiences this exact same world, this same body, this same life, as nirvana. The external world has not necessarily changed. The storms of life may still rage. There will still be sickness, loss, and disappointment. But the mind has found the calm, unshakable eye of the hurricane. It is no longer tossed about by the winds of fortune. It abides in a deep internal peace that is not touched by the chaos outside. It is the discovery of a sanctuary within that is always available, regardless of the outer weather. This peace is of a radically different nature from what we usually call happiness. Our ordinary happiness is conditional. It depends on getting the promotion, on being in a relationship, on our health being good, on people liking us. Because all of these conditions are, by their very nature, impermanent, our happiness is always fragile and precarious. The peace of nirvana is described as unconditioned. It does not depend on anything. It is not contingent on whether we are experiencing pleasure or pain, gain or loss, praise or blame. It is an intrinsic quality of a purified mind. This is the ultimate freedom, the freedom from reactivity. An insult may be heard by the ear, but because there is no solid ego to receive it, the fire of anger does not ignite. A painful loss may occur, but because it is seen through the clear lens of impermanence, the fire of despair does not consume the heart. A moment of great pleasure may be experienced, but because the mind is free from clinging, its inevitable passing does not lead to the fire of grief. To live in this state is to be free from the tyranny of our own reactions, to meet all of life's experiences with a wise, compassionate, and balanced heart. There is a timeless and beautiful image that perfectly captures this state of being: the lotus flower. The lotus has its roots deep down in the dark, murky mud at the bottom of a pond. This mud represents our ordinary world, samsara, with all of its messiness, its confusion, and its pain. The stem of the lotus grows up from this mud, through the murky water, but the blossom opens on the surface, into the clear air and sunlight, and its petals are pristine, radiant, and completely unstained by the mud from which it came. The lotus does not try to escape the mud. It uses the very mud and muck as the necessary nourishment for its beautiful, transcendent bloom. This is the model for an awakened life. To find nirvana is not to be airlifted out of the messy reality of human existence. It is to learn how to live in the world, rooted in the realities of our lives, but with a heart and mind that remain unstained by the world's greed, hatred, and confusion. It is to find the sublime right in the midst of the ordinary. Nirvana, therefore, is not a distant goal at the end of a long and arduous road. It is the quality of peace and freedom that grows within us, with every mindful breath, every act of kindness, every moment of letting go. It is the natural state of a mind that has been washed clean of its toxic irritants. It is the stillness at the center of the storm, a stillness that was always there, waiting patiently beneath the turbulence of our own minds to be discovered. This realization brings our deep exploration of the path to its natural conclusion. We have seen the nature of the human condition. We have examined the path that leads to its healing, and we have glimpsed the profound and beautiful freedom that is its ultimate fruit. All that remains now is to gather these precious threads of wisdom and hold them in our hearts as we continue our journey, step by step, breath by breath, through the great, unfolding mystery of our lives. Our journey together is now coming to a close. We began in a place of quiet desperation, stuck in the traffic of our own minds, feeling the unseen storm of a deep and pervasive dissatisfaction. We gave this storm a name, dukkha, and in naming it, we began to dispel its power. We looked bravely into its heart, discovering that it was fueled by the relentless, burning fires of our own craving, our own aversion, and the deep, pervasive fog of our own misunderstanding. This clear diagnosis, however, was not a cause for despair, but the very foundation of hope. For upon this ground, we unfolded an ancient and noble map, the Eightfold Path, a comprehensive guide leading from confusion to clarity. We learned to cultivate the wisdom to see reality as it is, the ethical grace to live in a way that is harmless and beautiful, and the mental discipline to tame the wildness of our minds and open the boundless potential of our hearts. We have seen that a profound and unshakable peace is not a distant dream, but a living possibility for each of us. If there is one essential truth to carry with you from this entire exploration, let it be this: peace is not a destination you must travel to. It is not a prize to be won after a long and arduous struggle. It is not something that can be bought, achieved, or found in any external person, place, or circumstance. Peace is an inside job. It is a quality of being that is cultivated, moment by moment, within the sanctuary of your own heart and mind. The goal of this path has never been to stop the storms of life. The winds of change will always blow. The waves of pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, will continue to wash upon the shores of our lives. The practice is not about building a seawall strong enough to hold back the ocean. The practice is about learning to be a skillful surfer, riding the waves with balance and grace. It is about discovering that within the very center of the most ferocious hurricane, there is a point of profound and unshakable stillness. This stillness is your true nature. The path is simply the journey of returning home to it. Therefore, let this not be an end, but a beginning. Do not be discouraged by the magnitude of the path, or by the perceived distance to the goal. This journey is not about achieving a flawless perfection, but about the sincere and patient intention to move in a wholesome direction. There will be days when you forget, days when old habits of anger and anxiety reassert themselves with great force. This is not failure. This is simply the weather of the mind. The practice, in those moments, is to meet yourself with a boundless compassion, to forgive yourself with the same tenderness you would offer a dear friend, and to gently, kindly begin again. Every conscious breath is a victory. Every moment of choosing a kind word over a harsh one is a moment of enlightenment. Every time you notice the arising of a difficult emotion and meet it with the light of your awareness rather than the fuel of your reactivity, you become a little freer. The storm is within you, but so is the stillness. The fires of suffering are within you, but so is the cool, clear water of peace. The choice, in this moment and the next, is always yours. May you walk in peace. May you be free.